In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. Loving God, bless our memories and our sorrow. Bring comfort to those who mourn, healing to those who doubt, hope to those who despair. We ask for your comfort, Lord. May our hearts be open to your healing touch. May our spirits be prepared to acknowledge the glory of your heavenly kingdom. We ask this through Jesus, your Son, and our brother in love. Amen. All saints, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen.
Thank you.
With all that is happening around the world, we are especially conscious of the importance of reconciliation. And for us, in terms of supporting our Indigenous communities, reconciliation is about honoring the dish with one spoon wampum, one of the most foundational treaties, the sacrament of reconciliation and the Catholic school teaching of subsidiarity are important anchors for us as a people of Jesus and are important links to our work and the land. As always, we thank the Mississauga of the Credit, our local treaty partners who have been stewards of this land for generations. Together we commit to beauty and peace and to fight injustices and vigorously, passionately, resolutely create the future with hope.
Through the chair, we have the taupe sheet additions.
Agenda item E6, extended excursion report, which was handed out by Cindy, and the withdrawal of the in-camera session, private in-camera session. Approval of the agenda with the changes moved by Trustee Del Rosario. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. No declaration. Approval of the minutes of the Administration and Finance Committee meeting, September the 10th. Trustee Corbett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you, just prior to approval, there is one typo on page 8 in question 10. The word arrangement just has an extra D, so just a typo. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved by Trustee Stefano Pascucci. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Daniel?
Thank you and good evening. And through the chair, we move on to section B, which is awards and presentations. This evening, we have a presentation from Crime Stoppers, and I invite Imran Hassan and Harry Pedwell to the podium to present.
Gentlemen, welcome. You've been informed of the 5-minute allocation of time?
Through the chair, it's a presentation, so that's we have a bit more flexibility on the presentation.
A little bit more. I'll give you all the flexibility you need, Imran.
Good evening. On behalf of Crime Stoppers, I'd like to thank
Harry, can you speak right into the mic, please?
Thank you. Good evening. On behalf of Crime Stoppers, I'd like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to have a chance to come in and tell you a little bit about ourselves and the work that we do in the community. To start off with, myself, I am the vice chair of the board for Peel Crime Stoppers. Imran is the chair of the board. We've both been serving with Crime Stoppers for between 3 and 5 years. What I'm looking to cover today, myself and Imran, is a little bit about us. A couple of points are there. Some of the community impact that we've been able to achieve in the last couple of years within Peel. Talk about our community engagements and opportunities for collaborations, current ones that we're doing and potential ones with the district and school. So about us, Crime Stoppers itself as an organization was started in 1976, started in the United States. If you actually have a chance to look it up, it has quite a good story to it. Bad reason, good story. There was a murder at a gas station that occurred in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the police investigated it. They were not able to find any information after about a week. They were sort of at the end of their leads. And one of the detectives came up with an idea of putting on the radio, advertising the fact that this crime was committed, looking for people to come up and provide anonymous tips, and offered a reward for that. It was unique because it had never been done before. When it was done, within a few days, they had a number of tips, and within a week, they had an arrest, and a conviction came out of that. And that was for a murder that would otherwise have gone unsolved. From there, Crime Stoppers has spread across the U.S., North America, and across various countries throughout the world. We are a volunteer organization, 100%. We have no paid staff. We are a registered charity, so although we work closely with various organizations ourselves, we are a independent organization that enables the tips that we receive to be considered to be independent, so that they're covered by the confidentiality. In chapters, we have 37 chapters in Ontario. Those correspond with the various regions in Ontario, and we have 87 total across Canada. What we do, so we have three main areas that we concentrate on. Aid police in preventing and solving crimes. That's directly related to the tips that we receive from the community. We promote community safety and security. So you may see us occasionally out at different events or locations, either providing lectures or having a booth just to provide information on what we do and how people can use our services. And to strengthen the relationship between the public and first responders. What we've found in the past, there's a significant wall there between the public and the first responders that's very difficult to breach. In a lot of events we just invite the public to come out and get to know the first responders, whether that be police, whether that be ambulance, whether that be fire department, so that barrier goes down, so that there's less likelihood that people will be prevented from providing information to them. We're part of the public safety ecosystem. What I mean by that is that within, for example, Mississauga, there's really three organizations that are involved in helping solve crime. First and most obvious is the police force. The second, in no particular order, is you'll find Safe City Mississauga. So they do things like the Community Watch, Business Watch, and those organizations there. And then you have Crime Stoppers. And we're unique in that all of our tips are anonymous. For that reason, we are an indispensable resource.
Sorry, can you just hold, my apologies. Can staff put it up on the screen so trustees can, we can follow on our computers if we've brought our computers, but if not, we'd like to see it up on the screen, if possible. Please. It was there. Harry must have touched something.
I breathed too hard and should I just continue in the interest of time? Or?
You heard the associate director. You got lots of time.
Okay, thank you. Like we're the third leg of the stool as far as community safety is concerned within Peel Region. One of the main things we're also trying to do is overcome apathy and fear. So people who do not want to report because they see that things that they what they see they think is not significant enough to report, or vice versa, when you have people who are afraid to report and want a way that they can do so that which doesn't get traced back to them, but still provides the police with information that can lead to an arrest. So how we do it is we primarily do our work through the anonymous tip line. The line nowadays is no longer just the old phone. It's also, we have a web app, and we have a website that people can provide tips to. We do our crime prevention and public safety messages that you may see around, and we do a lot of community engagement and initiatives. The big things for us that when we're doing this work is ensuring that we're doing it with a lot of collaboration with community partners. Again, we have no dedicated staff, and we have no sustainable public funding. So we do our own fundraising to make sure that our program operates. Our anonymous tip line, the number is there. The P3 address is there, which is our app. It allows essentially all those methods allow people to report suspicious and illegal activities. They don't have to provide their name. We don't take caller IDs. We don't take IP addresses. And our independence is protected by informer privilege, which cases have gone to the Supreme Court, and it's been reinforced by the Supreme Court that it is informer privilege, and that no information can be released. So the variety of crimes that exist in the community is exactly what we report on. So it covers the whole spectrum from auto theft, which is obviously a topic of interest these days, all the way through to elder abuse, hate crimes. It covers the gambit. We do have some specific campaigns that we are running right now for human trafficking, because the GTA is a hub for human trafficking. But there's a lot of any crime that exists has been reported essentially through Crime Stoppers. Some of our community impact on the numbers are there. Our telephone tips for last year were up 10%. Our online tips were up 17%, and the arrests related to the tips were up 100%, which is significant. I don't think we can point at exactly one thing that helped with that. Other than our overall volume has gone up, and our message hopefully is getting more and more out there to the public that they can use us reliably to provide information. Community engagements. We believe a lot in growing our called brand recognition and awareness of what we do through community engagements. So we've done a variety of things. We've done a seniors game show that was done at Square One in March of last year. We did a first responders recognition barbecue, which we do every June, and we recognize first responders and their work they do, but also invite the public out to have a chance to meet the first responders, see their equipment. It's a full day for a family-oriented engagement. We do car washes as well, document shredding. We had a hot sauce challenge recently. And we do a Toys for Tots program in coordination with Amazon and Peel Regional Police in December every year. Collaborations, a variety of organizations that we do collaborate with. So that ranges from schools to retirement centers to places of worship. We've done different things with associations. We have big support from groups like the Lions Club. We have a number of service organizations also, and a number of social clubs that we work with. Last point I have, slide here I have is collaboration opportunities with the board. Imran, did you want to talk to this?
Good evening, and thank you to our respected members of the board as well as our distinguished staff. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Imran Hassan. I'm the chair for Peel Crime Stoppers. I want to thank my vice chair, Harry Pedwell, for preparing the slide deck and preparing the presentation today and delivering. I want to stress that Peel Crime Stoppers is a community trusted partner. We're here to build bridges of understanding and peace and harmony with all of our members in the community, including our school boards. And we feel that what we bring to the table as the anonymous tip line in 1-800-222-TIPS is going to provide safety, security, and confidentiality to the entire school community. We want to ensure that the resources that we bring to the table are something that will benefit everyone. And we want to ensure that we have an open dialogue and that we are building this relationship over time. And we want to also clarify that we are not an agency of Peel Regional Police, OPP, RCMP, CBSA, or any other law enforcement agency. We are a volunteer-led community and a registered charity. So we're here to represent the best interest of the public and members of the community. So I'm going to hand it back over to Harry so he can just touch on some of the initiatives that we would like to engage in with the different Peel Catholic School Board, and also open up the floor for any questions and any ideas that you may have that we could welcome in building that collaboration.
Thank you, Imran. So the level of collaboration obviously would depend on what the board would like to do. We can stress, first of all, though, that any collaboration would be at no cost to the board. It's all items that we as a program would be coordinating. Some of the examples that I put up here is number one is signage, just advertising the program within the board to the full community. One of the things that we have noticed is that with the high level of immigration within Peel Region, there's a lot of individuals who are definitely not familiar with the program and could definitely use the program. And what we have also found is that there's a lot of walls to wanting to give information out of fear within an immigrant community, which our program helps to pull down and tear that open. So signage is one option that we can do. Presentations, if the board was open to it, we can also do presentations, both on the program in general, as well as specific areas that the board may want to touch on. We can look at those from a crime perspective. And student projects would be the third idea that we were looking at. Specifically, we were looking at putting together a social media program. And for us, there's no use in myself and Imran putting together a social media program. What you need is those students who know their audience to develop those. So we could put together a program where, for example, students could develop a short social media platform advertisements about the program and how to use it, and we could give them volunteer hours for things of that nature. That's just a couple of ideas that we came up with, but definitely open to what the board would be interested in doing.
Thank you, Harry. Questions? Maria?
Well, thank you, Imran and Harry, for your presentation. It's a valuable organization, and I think what's impressive is how much you have accomplished with a volunteer-based charity organization that has no sustainable public funding. So my thanks to you both for sharing your time, your volunteer capacities, and in service to our communities. My question through the chair is, I did take a look at the Crime Stoppers website. There was some information. The organization is looking for volunteers. It also mentioned having 1 or 2 years of commitment. Our secondary students actually require 40 hours of community service. It's a graduation requirement. And I know you mentioned the social media involvement, but is there an opportunity for volunteers, for students, so they would be 18 years or younger, so they wouldn't qualify for the criminal reference check that your adult volunteers would be doing, but is there something that they could in some capacity, whether it's volunteering for Toys for Tots or the farmer's market or the car washes, so they could help earn their volunteer hours?
Thank you. Trustee Corbett, for that question. We did have a discussion outside exactly about this and how important it is for us to engage our youth and how we could, through special projects, facilitate that request and be able to accommodate the 40 hours that the students would require. So most certainly, we would be interested in developing some special initiatives that would allow a number of students, and we would take a look at the intake of how many students would be interested and be able to put together a program to satisfy those 40 hours. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Trustee Corbett? Trustee D'Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this presentation. My question is, do you all have collaboration with any other school boards in the province?
At the moment, we are rebuilding our relationships with stakeholders in the community. We have worked very diligently to work with service organizations, our independent businesses, as well as other organizations. And through the chair and the relationship that we've been building over time through other trustees who are here, we are engaging in this initiative with the Dufferin Peel Catholic School Board first. And then once we're able to prove our concept here and build those partnerships, then we would like to expand that beyond Dufferin Peel Catholic School Board.
Well, Chair, just one more question.
Go ahead.
I did hear you all saying that signage would be the first thing which you all would look at in addition to other initiatives. So my question is to staff, I mean, what would it take to have their signage be put up in our schools in case the board approves it?
Through the chair, I mean, we'd have to work with them through corporate communications, find out what the signage looks like, you know, the size, best location, but we need to absolutely meet post this meeting to explore a lot of those in a little more detail, whether it be signage, presentations, or student projects.
So, to you, Mr. Chairman, so can we look at proceeding with this?
Yes, oh, that would be the plan. Once we're done, concluded this presentation, then before the gentlemen leave, we'll set up a meeting with them.
Thank you. I mean, and if it would be helpful if the trustees are informed on the progress of this initiative that we're taking, being the first in the province, and I would assume in the country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Oh, Trustee Del Rosario, please.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Mr. Chair. Although Trustee D'Souza asked my question, but I didn't get the clear answer through the chair. So could just go back to working with the school. So have you been working with other schools, other school board currently? Or not yet? I'm trying to clarify. Not yet, right? Yeah. So if you're going to work with our schools, like I noticed you're looking at presentations. So what kind of presentations do you think we can give to our students? Is it something similar to this or something else?
I think we'd have to examine what it would be. As a collaboration, it has to be looking at what your needs are and wants and figuring out what we can provide. Obviously, the most obvious is presentations just about the program itself, but we can also tailor it to specific concerns or issues. Like I mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, our lines are meant for the whole spectrum of crime, everything from bullying to human trafficking to car theft. So if there's specific issues that the school board is experiencing that they might want to be addressed, we can definitely try to tailor a program to that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Imran.
It would be certainly age appropriate. It would certainly be culturally appropriate. It would be something that would be mindful and respectful of the faith as well. And we want to ensure that we're taking in all the input and feedback from our respected stakeholders who are here today and be able to propose what that presentation can look like. And then once we have your approval, then we would certainly be able to deploy those presentations, whether they are in person or virtually or both.
Thank you. That is very helpful because I noticed you've got a whole list of where you could help prevent and solve any issues. So all of those through the chair are really important for our students and for our parents. So another thing to look at is for our council that can be presented. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Imran and Harry.
Thank you, Trustee Del Rosario. Trustee Stefano Pascucci?
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I guess the question would be, apart from signage, presentations, student projects, and so on and so forth, if you were to get more integrated within our system, how would that look if there was some type of information provided to you regarding some type of illegal activity? Or so would it go to yourselves and then back to the school? Would it go direct to the school directly?
So with our program, the way that it is established is that all the tips that come in, they actually would go to the police, and the police would interact with the school board and with the particular schools to address the issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
If I could just add something, Chair, about the question that the trustee had asked. We at the board don't ever see any information that comes through the anonymous tip line. I just want to make that clear. We have an independent call center separate from the 911 call center. So none of the information that comes through ever reaches the police directly. It goes through the call center. All of the information is scrubbed. And what that means is that any information that may inadvertently provide any information about either the tipster or anyone who is involved will be removed. Meaning, I know Harry had mentioned earlier that the caller ID is removed, any IP address is removed. But let's suggest for a second that someone called in and said, oh, my next door neighbor at this address has conducted this kind of nefarious activity. Well, by claiming the next door neighbor, you've implicated yourself. So therefore, that is removed from the tip before it's handed over to the police. So truly, your identity is protected, you remain anonymous, and there is full confidentiality. So at no time does anyone who is reporting the tip, will they ever be implicated. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Imran. Any other questions? If I could just pass the chair to Trustee Pascucci. I have a question, actually to staff with regards to something that presentation of this nature could be made, I guess, when after you have the conversation after tonight, if we could look at doing during either a meeting of superintendent with their principals to see if the principals value the relationship and build it with the community, and have an evening, or have it when we have our not a parent engagement per se, but when we have, like the last meeting that we had with respect to Central Committee, but of all parents, of all schools, if they could at least hear and see what was presented this evening, they would have a better understanding, because I know that I will be speaking to my community to say, if this comes out when staff has investigated, you might want to consider it. And some people might just call out of the blue to find out what it's all about, and the interest that, because I get these emails from, I think it's called Neighborhood, and it talks about people going in the middle of the night and either stealing packages, opening car doors, things of that nature. These are the kind of tips that you would be looking for. Am I correct in assuming that? So, I mean, it's something that people talk about, all of the illegal, criminal, and minor criminal issues that go on in our community. And I don't think I think I can speak for everybody in this room that we've either experienced it, seen it, or have had a conversation with somebody that has had it. And I think people have had it. They're up to here with it. And, you know, based on what staff is going to come up with the conversations that I've had with Mr. Hassan, I think that it would be something that we would value, we would find intriguing and interesting to assist in our community, as well as some of our neighborhoods in general.
Yeah. So through the chair, step one is absolutely meet and then expand this to whether it's a different type of presentation, different audience, explore the different examples as well. And then we'd look at rolling it out potentially to the larger community, whether it's our administrators or school councils in an evening. But I think we need to touch base first to get a better understanding.
And once staff has gone through all of that and assuming it's approved, if it's not, we know what happens. But if it is approved, then trustees could share the names of the two presenters tonight and contact information, and they could present at the school council or a school function of whatever sort. Correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Seeing no one else speaking, I would like, Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure and wonderful to finally get you here.
Thank you again for the opportunity, Chair Inika, and thank you to our respected trustees as well as our distinguished members of the board, as well as our superintendents and our staff. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. No delegations. Reports from trustees for receipt. Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association report.
Mr. Chairman, there's nothing to report, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Luz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to remind everybody that in January, second week of January, there's the conference for the OXA conference. Michelle will be sending a reminder to all of you just to see if you're available to attend the seminar. That's all.
Thank you. Good news stories. Go ahead, Luz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This morning, Trustee Paula D'Amato Giovanazzi and myself and Director Maserato and Associate Director Daniel Del Bianco, we were able to attend a Lectio Divina by Cardinal Collins, former Cardinal. Do I call him former or he's still Cardinal? Oh, Emeritus Cardinal Collins. And it was a lovely service. It's really a divine reading. And I was very impressed with our students of St. Paul Catholic Secondary School that they were there, they listened, and they digested all of what Emeritus Cardinal Collins expressed to us. And I tell you, he was with the kids the way he has communicated with the kids. And the other important thing that happened this morning is the work. Who's that? The woodworking students of St. Paul built a picture of the family, the Holy Family, and they painted it, and it was blessed by Emeritus Cardinal Collins this morning. If you get the opportunity, please stop by at St. Paul. I'm inviting them at your school. Please stop by at St. Paul Secondary School, Catholic Secondary School, in their chapel. They're going to mount it in the chapel when you get the opportunity. So I just want to share that. It was a lovely morning. I was so proud of our students that they really paid attention and behaved. A beautiful ceremony this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to add, Trustee Del Rosario, the Stations of the Cross in the chapel were actually created by the students of the school a number of years ago. And for any trustee that goes to, as per your invitation, any trustee that goes, please check into the office and register that you're in the building.
Inside comment.
Yeah. Daniel, the next order of business. Oh,
Thank-
sorry. Trustee Bria Corbett?
My apologies, I was a little late to the party there. Through the chair, a student of Dufferin Peel, her name's Jordan. You may remember her from a few years ago. She presented at a Faith and Program Committee for her annual sock drive. So it is now 10 years. This is her 10th year of her sock drive. And I just wanted to share some good news because her 2023 year, last year, she collected 8,161 pairs of socks, new socks. They were all donated and they are delivered by her family and friends and now volunteer team to local shelters, as well as some that go a little bit further to Coalberg and Toronto. So this being her 10th year, she set an ambitious goal of 10,000 pairs of socks. So I just wanted to recognize the hard work that she's been doing. She's really passionate about it. And it's about serving the communities, our local communities. It was an idea of hers that the homeless, while they're often given food and items of clothing, the least donated but most needed item is socks. So I just want to congratulate her on her efforts, and hopefully our schools can help to support that initiative as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bria. Any other good news stories? Seeing none. Daniel, the next order of business?
Thank you. And through the chair, we move on to section E of the agenda, reports from committees and administration for receipt. E1 is the Community Planning and Partnership, our 2024-2025 annual public meeting report. And I invite Senior Planner Joanne Rogers to present the report.
Thank you and good evening through the chair. The Community Planning Partnership report you have before you is the annual update of available space in schools that the board is required to share with community partners as per the board's Community Planning and Partnership policy. The main purpose of the Community Planning and Partnership policy is to encourage school boards to work with community partners to optimize the use of public assets owned by school boards to the benefit of the school board, students, and the community. Community planning and partnerships is specifically for daytime use of space in open and operating schools, as well as any potential co-build opportunities. Similar to previous years, there is no listed space in existing schools for the 2024-25 school year. Notwithstanding the number of shuttered classrooms in the system, there are limited rooms that can be segregated from the rest of the school building with separate access and available washrooms to ensure that any potential partners can be self-contained. Any available space is limited to FTK rooms which have separate access and existing washrooms. Staff would review these types of requests on a case-by-case basis. The board currently hosts 7 community partners, which are located in schools where they are separated from students and have designated access to their licensed space. Each community partner has entered into a binding agreement for use of the space and is charged a cost recovery fee for use of this space. Notwithstanding that new opportunities for partnerships at existing schools are limited, co-build opportunities will continue to be considered through future capital priority requests. In addition to the annual Community Planning and Partnership report presentation, partnership opportunities can be requested throughout the year. Further information and the CPP application form can be found on the board's website. This concludes this presentation, and Manager Cox and I are happy to answer any questions that trustees may have on this matter.
Any questions? Trustee Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. In reading the report, so on page 31, it had mentioned at this time, there's no available spaces in open and operating schools available for use by community partners, subject to the above noted criteria. We have some schools with shuttered classrooms. Some are quite large, given our declining enrollment, and some have more space than others. Are there any of these school locations that we could look into in terms of potential opportunities for partnerships?
Through the chair, we definitely acknowledge that we do have a number of spaces available in schools through shuttered classrooms. However, the issue with some of these spaces is they're not conducive to partners because they don't have a separate access. The washrooms are not separate from the students that still use them. So there would be some capital work required to segregate some of these spaces. If we did have a community partner approach us, willing to do some of the work required to either build a wall or washrooms or whatever the case may be, that's something that we could look at. And that is open to anybody throughout the year.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question through the chair. So if a potential, I guess before a potential partner came forward, is there an opportunity to accommodate or make some of those accommodations proactively so that there would be a space that's available and ready for use?
Through the chair, it would all come down to funding and the costs to do the work. And sometimes community partners are very specific in the space that they need, so we'd be hesitant to do any work ahead of schedule if we don't know what the requirements are.
That's fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Next order of business.
Thank you. Through the chair, we move on to item E2, which is the October 31st, 2024 enrollment report. And I invite Manager Cox to present that report.
Thank you. Good evening, and through the chair. The report that you have before you, started on page 33 of the agenda, is with respect to the annual collection of student enrollment data as of October 31st, 2024, which is required by the Ministry of Education. As noted in the report, Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board reported a total of 70,784 students as of October 31st this year. 40,549 were elementary students and 30,235 were secondary students. This is a decrease of 896 elementary students, however, an increase of 248 secondary students from October 2023. The overall board decline from one year to the next was 648 total students. The enrollment report is attached as Appendix 1 on page 34 of the agenda, and it does break down enrollments by school and by grade at both the elementary and secondary panels. The difference in enrollment for each school between October 2023 and 2024 is also identified in the last column on the page. The report notes that there was a total of 198 students enrolled in remote learning between the elementary and secondary panels, 60 of which were elementary and 138 were secondary students. This concludes the presentation of the report, and we're happy to answer any questions trustees may have.
Any questions? Muriel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Question I'd like to ask is, I know we go back another 10 years with declining numbers, et cetera. My concern right now, the loss of the number of students that we have, what was the financial cost? I don't expect this answer here and now, but what was the financial cost to us in lost seat revenue, I guess, for lack of a better term?
So through the chair, I wouldn't have the exact calculation, but there's a couple of things. A loss of any student equates to approximately $11,000 per student in the core education funding,
Yes.
right? So we would have to play that out. But there's also a reduction of costs. If you don't have the students, you don't have the teachers. So you save by not having to hire as many teachers as well. So there's offsetting components to that calculation.
And what about the, let's call it ongoing costs in terms of running an organization such as this, or even micro-organizing an organization like a school, 145? What is the impact there?
So through the chair, the operational costs are where it's harder to make those reductions right away. So you're not closing schools. There is the moratorium. So you're still operating, heating, lighting those schools, even though you're seeing a reduction of students across all the schools. So that's an ongoing cost. You still have custodial staff, you still have to clean the schools. So there's some costs you can't save money on. So the operational component, it takes a lot longer to right size your operations to a loss in enrollment. We've been doing some of that over the years because we've been seeing decreases along the way.
I'm not asking for a decrease in population of workers. I'm asking, in fact, where the costs are and where the costs are going and how we can, next question is how we can remediate this particular situation where we have about 10 years, 11 years worth of data that's telling us we're declining. The question I'd like to ask on behalf of the community is simply this. If we do have a decrease in population, what are we doing to minimize that decrease? Not get rid of it, because it's going to happen over time for various reasons. What are some of the fundamental reasons we're actually incurring this decline? Is it similar to our coterminous boards, if you will? These are not questions I expect an answer tonight, but more of a fulsome discussion relative to marketing plans and things of that nature, because at the end of the day, we get to a point where we're in gray area and then we're in the dark area. In other words, we only have so much money to run a place at a cost recovery basis. We lose the opportunity. And the question is, do we implode from inside because we don't have the money? Or why are we not driving the people through? Now, it's quite be some very fundamental where students are coming from, decline in population, things of that nature. That means be fundamental, but I'd like to refer to some of that conversation. Can I just ask your opinion on that and go from there?
So through the chair, I know annually we produce a long-term facilities master plan geared to the enrollment information, and we provide information on where we're seeing the trends of enrollment decline or growth, or where they tend to be going. The good news is, and that report will come out at some point this year, the good news is the decline is actually decreasing, if that, sorry to use a
That's
double
encouraging.
word there,
It's
but
encouraging, yeah.
the rate of decline has kind of subsided a little bit. So we are seeing a little bit more of a stabilizing in the enrollment. Our decrease, again, this is year over year with FTE. When we report to the ministry, we have an average daily enrollment that's used, which is a little bit different. But we are seeing a decline in the rate of decline. So that's good news. And perhaps as we move forward in future years, we might see a little bit more of that enrollment come through. But again, that report speaks to what happens with our enrollment and other opportunities with regards to how we market or advertise our board and that type of discussion.
Can you ask one more question, Mr. Chairman? Or
Go ahead, Mayor.
thank you. And this is the only question. That's great, but now if I was to go back to my community and say, here are some numbers that I have some concerns about, let me turn around and say, what about the potential of closing schools and what have you? And then I would have to say, well, we're doing our best in terms of promoting ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, the coterminous boards or whoever, what's happening in the GTA or whatever relevance you have in terms of relevance that we might have relevant to the community, do we truly tell them what the concerns are and do they understand why? Because at one point, and it's happening this particular September, where we had an increased numbers of split grades because of lack of population. And these are the kind of concerns that these will just become louder and louder and louder. It wasn't air conditioning this year, it was split grades. And I can understand a parent's concern, but we have to show them some numbers and say, listen, because of the decline in Rome, this is happening. You know, how long can you carry that story? When, through you, Mr. Chairman, I did ask this, say just the question, when do you see this report coming through, Julie? Daniel?
Through the chair, the report typically comes out in February, the first of two. But what I will say, because we've had, I'll base it on last year's report, at a very high level, the reality is there are fewer Catholics living in and moving to Peel Region. And those that are living, staying, working in Peel Region are having fewer children. There's two trends there that we're kind of caught right square in the crosshairs of. And that's playing out in enrollments at all of our schools. You know, some in the new communities are expanding, but we've all had those schools in our communities at one time. They exploded. And now if you look back 10 years, you know, 10 years onward, you're like, there used to be portables, there used to be a sea of portables, and now we're down to 200 students with shuttered classrooms. So it's just a reality of the demographics within our region.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And Daniel and Julie, thank you for those responses. Simply put, I'd like to get some more information about this and how we can proactively reduce the withdrawal of students within the system, being it, like you just said, Daniel, the idea for where the population's coming from and all that stuff. These are very critical points that we should be aware of. And I thank you. I'm going to stop.
Any other questions? Great. Trustee Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. The increase of 248 secondary students, do we know were these larger grade 8 cohorts that have, increased the volumes in secondary, or are we getting them from different boards or different regions?
Through the chair, it would be a combination of things, but I think primarily the growth from secondary is from students outside of Dufferin Peel who enter into grade 9.
Thank you.
Daryl? Trustee D'Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, what does it mean when we say a school is capped?
Through the chair, you're referring to secondary, I'm assuming?
We don't cap elementaries, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
We do.
When we cap a school, we would bring a report to the Board of Trustees identifying the maximum number of students that we would allow to register starting in grade 9. We always account for Dufferin Peel students coming from our feeder schools first, and then we have, there's extra space for those coming from outside the board. But there's different ways that we've actually capped schools in the past. So if there's a specific school that you had that you're referring to, we could get that information. But normally we cap the grade 9s, and that would carry through up to grade 12 until enrollment levels out at that school. And generally, we only cap schools when the enrollment is significantly greater than the capacity, and we're coming to the critical point of adding portables to the site.
Thank you for that answer. So we cap only grade 9, or when those 9 go to 10, 10 is capped, or when the 10 go to 11, the 11 is capped.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Then what happens to the 9 in year 2? That's uncapped?
Through the chair, we would maintain that cap until we do an assessment of whether or not enrollment is starting to subside. But normally it takes about 4 or 5 years for the enrollments to level out at a school based on what we're projecting.
I don't know if you have this answer now, but is St. Rock capped?
Pardon me, through the chair, did you ask if it was capped?
Is it capped now?
Through the chair, yes, it is.
But then we've lost 18 students over there. Enrollment between last year and this year, there's a reduction of 18 students.
Through the chair, we don't know that that the number is going to be reduced until we actually see those numbers. So we want to, through the chair, that's correct. So we collected that data in October, but when students are registering, we're not sure if they're going to exceed their cap. We want to ensure that they don't go over that cap, but there's still currently 18 spaces available for students to attend St. Rock.
So are we removing the cap?
Through the chair, we want to be very cautious when we remove caps because this might be a blip that we didn't have the enrollment this year. So we would check next year, we would look to see if that enrollment is below the cap again. And if we see some consistency in enrollments below the cap, then we would look at removing the cap.
Then that's a loss of $180,000 in funding.
Through the chair, we're still accepting students though. So even though it's just that the enrollment has declined. It hasn't reached the cap. So there's still room for students to enter the school. We haven't lost any money in terms of turning students away. We just haven't seen that enrollment growth.
But then what's the point of the cap?
Through the chair, as I indicated, we want to make sure that this just is not a blip, that it's just not this 1 year that we have not exceeded the cap. We want to make sure that we've consistently not exceeded the cap before we actually remove it. We want to make sure that next year, if all of a sudden, 50 extra students show up, we want to make sure that that cap is still in place. But we can always look at reducing or removing the cap, but we just want to make sure there's some consistency before
Who
we do so.
monitors the cap?
Through the chair, I would, in combination with the principal. We consult with the principal 4 times a year with respect to their enrollment projections. And if they anticipate that they are going to have more or less than the cap, that's information that they would share with me, and the projections are based on that. So just because they have a cap in place of 375 students in grade 9, that doesn't mean that they're going to get 375 students. Over the last number of years, their feeder and school enrollment has declined, so they haven't reached that number.
Then
So it-
why have we kept the cap then?
So the cap is in place, as you might recall, when we first took that report to the board, because the school at the time was not able to accommodate the number of students. There's also no room to place portables there, and we would have to do an extensive amount of work with respect to the parking lot and the installation of portables. So that's why the cap was introduced. The cap has done its work, and the school is no longer at that pressure point. But still, notwithstanding the cap being in place, there are not enough students to fill up the building.
Can we have a discussion on this offline, probably during the week or next week? Because I need to understand this. It doesn't make logical sense. Because when people call me saying they want admission to St. Roch, I say it's capped. And then now I hear that the cap is, you can remove the cap when you want, you can put it on when you want. So I'm a little confused. So we can have this discussion offline
Through the
probably this week, later this week or next week.
Yeah,
Thank
through
you.
the chair, we're happy to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Any other questions? Seeing none. Daniel, next order of business.
Through the chair, we move on to item E3, which is the unassigned boundary review. And once again, I invite Manager Cox to present the report.
Thank you, Daniel, and through the chair. On an annual basis, the Planning Department reviews school boundaries and recommends potential changes to reduce enrollment pressures and to balance enrollment in neighborhood schools. Staff has identified areas of the board that are currently not located within school boundaries or existing boundaries that require minor adjustments, which we would consider a housekeeping adjustment. In situations where there are no assigned boundaries, this is likely the result of these lands being identified as non-residential. In light of recent zoning proposals that could see these lands now being developed for residential uses, as well as the establishment of new shelter accommodations in hotel and motel facilities, it is necessary to include all areas of Dufferin Peel's jurisdiction within existing school boundaries. So for context, if you could kindly refer to map 1 in the agenda on page 46. If you look at the pink area, that is the boundary for St. John Henry Newman. You will notice a solid pink portion as well as a hatched pink portion identified with a D. The hatched portion identified as D was at one time an unassigned boundary for an elementary school. This has now become part of the permanent boundary for St. John Henry Newman. Hatched area D was already identified as part of the St. Thomas Aquinas Secondary School boundary and will remain status quo. So now if you move on to map 2 on the following page, these are the Mississauga schools, and refer to the large yellow area with the hatched portion identified with an H. Once again, this area will now be part of the St. Raphael Elementary School boundary where it was not before. It will remain as part of the Ascension of Our Lord Secondary School boundary. So in terms of a housekeeping boundary, it's also illustrated on map 2, although not in Mississauga. The blue area to the north of Ascension, which is labeled with a G, it was previously part of the Ascension and St. Raphael School boundaries, but this area will now become part of the Cardinal Ambrosic Secondary School boundary and St. Andre Bessette Elementary School boundary. And it will also now align with Highway 407. Just to be clear, there are no students currently in this area. All of the unassigned boundaries and any housekeeping changes to existing boundaries are outlined in the chart at the top of each map. Planning staff have consulted with Stopper to ensure any existing students can be accommodated by Stopper on existing bus routes. But once again, it's important to note that there are, I haven't actually noted this, but there are no existing students will be affected by any of these changes. So some of the areas don't have students at all, and any of the areas that do have students will not be affected by these changes. So this concludes the presentation of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. Trustee Stefano Pascucci?
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Chairman. I'll ask for myself, and I don't know if other trustees want it, but can we get a better map provided to trustees? Specifically for my area, well, for me, for myself, my area. Sort of make out what it is, but I just want to make sure that I actually know what the boundaries are with the streets and so on and so forth. Is that possible?
Through the chair, yes, certainly
Thank
we
you.
can arrange that.
Perfect. And then had a look at page 46. Stuff here. So you mentioned about the pink hashed lines and then pink hash lines for St. John Henry Newman. When you pull up a map, anything that's hashed out is basically all commercial.
Through the chair, that non-residential,
Yeah,
correct?
so but it's commercial. It's got buildings and warehouses and so on and so forth.
Through the chair, that could be, yeah, that's correct.
Well, yeah, what's the chances that that's going to be redeveloped?
Through the chair, anything's possible. I mean, the municipalities are always redeveloping strip plazas. A good example of that is right at Bristol and here, Ontario. That whole plaza will be developed for residential at some point. So we just wanted to ensure that all of these areas are accounted for. And the other thing we want to keep in mind, some areas where there are hotels and motels that are hosting, that are hosting students, that they're also accounted for within our school boundaries.
And the reason why I ask is because I sort of figure this out with the lines and I guess the on-off ramps of the highway for here, Ontario and 403 for Corpus Christi. That olive, I'll call it olive, I guess, because colors very well, but olive ash lines, that's square one, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. Square One and the cinemas
Yes, thank you.
and Palladium.
Do you know how many buildings we're going to have up there and if that's going to cause a massive influx to Corpus Christi?
Through the chair, we have that information. Unfortunately, we just don't have it with us tonight. We can provide that.
And that little spit of land there, a little portion of land there, just above, I guess, what street would that be? Gordonthorpe, I guess? The little cutout of land there. Is that where the Tim Hortons used to be in the building? Just trying to figure, that's why I'm asking for a better map.
Through the chair, we'll provide a map that identifies the trustees' wards.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Stefano Pascucci. Go ahead.
Is it okay if I ask one more
Yeah,
question?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Been speaking to Associate Director Del Bianco today regarding, I got contacted by the counselor's office for the city of Mississauga for Ward 4 regarding buses going around and stopping in an area basically all at the same time and blocking traffic. Seeing how Square One, and that's specifically my area, Square One is going to have so many more buildings coming up there. How is Stopper going to mitigate any type of congestion or bottleneck? Because I'm assuming these students are going to have to get bused everywhere.
So through the chair, as always, there's a walking distance to a bus stop they have to adhere to. So once the buildings are up or throughout the planning stage, they'll start planning for the stops. But in high density areas, it's always going to be a very, very, very heavy traffic area. I don't think there's any avoiding that. So it's a matter of staggering potential school start times, which buses are going in there, what communities are they serving, how far are they driving. So they'd work with the coterminus board to stagger when buses go in and where the stops are and when they pick the students up.
Thank you. One last question, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you. Does Stopper work with the My Way and the Brampton Transit and all the other transit companies to sort of coordinate? The reason why I ask that is because if they're picking up students to bring them to Father Michael Gates, for example, and it's just down Confederation there's a bus that runs down Confederation, and we're busing students from the Square One area, or just north of the Square One area, down to Confederation. Father Michael Gates, are they working with the local transit authorities to, I'm not saying to alleviate, but sort of provide some type of incentive?
So through the chair, since I've been here with Dufferin Peel, it's been something on the agenda to work with to integrate the two transportation systems. We're not there yet, because the idea, if there is a bus, municipal bus serving an area, take advantage of the municipal bus, but then you're trying to coordinate start times, bell times with the municipal bus route. So it hasn't been as easy as we'd like to think it is, but it's an ongoing discussion that we have with local transit authorities.
Again, the reason why I ask is because I remember when I was younger, City of Toronto, if you had a student card, you got them for free, basically. So that should be something that hopefully we can speed up a little bit further. If you have to get up a little bit earlier to take a bus down and not have to wait for a bus in the cold, then hey, that may work. So thank you very much, Associate Director. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stefano. Trustee D'Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I seen St. Angela Mirchi's name somewhere in this presentation. I was wondering if we moved anywhere in terms of consolidating the English speaking and the French speaking between St. Angela Mirchi and St. Ursula.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I think that would make a fantastic question for our next report, which is the French immersion report.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Looking
trustee.
forward to hearing something good.
Thank you, trustee D'Souza. Trustee Mario Pascucci?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like other trustees that spoke earlier, can you give me a colored map? Please, let's not do this again because it's hard to see it, et cetera. So, but if you can do the hash mark maps back to us, we appreciate it. Thank you.
You have a question? No. Trustee Bria Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. So page 43 references the shelter accommodations as alternative facilities such as motels. In Ward 9, we have a Motel 6 that was initially intended for a temporary shelter, but it has now been designated as a permanent shelter location. I'm trying to follow your map here on page 47. So there's an area T. That's a secondary boundary revision area. It's got a red dashed line there. I think that's the area that I'm speaking about, although there's missing a few street names. So I'm kind of guessing there. But the elementary students that are in that shelter are currently bused to St. Teresa of Avila. The secondary students at that shelter that would be feeding into Our Lady of Mount Carmel Secondary School do not qualify busing on the basis of the distance criteria. But I would argue these students are missing school. Their families don't have cars. These students don't have bicycles. They don't even have winter clothing. And they have to cross some major intersections. There's Argentia, there's Winston Churchill, there's Dairy Road. I've walked it. It is long. It is far, and the school starts at 8:20 a.m. It's definitely over 3 kilometers. So through the chair, I'm just asking if we can look at this particular situation again, now that it's a permanent shelter location. Initially, it was temporary, and we had students that were transient and moving in and out and not staying. But they are now staying longer durations. And I'm concerned that while we've tried to achieve equity across the system in terms of distance requirements, these particular families are especially disadvantaged and could benefit from some school bus transportation if we can look at that. So I'm just posing it as an opportunity because their younger siblings are getting bus transportation, but the older ones are not.
Through the chair, not familiar with the actual address or the distance. It's something that I can address with STOPR to find out what the actual distances are and whatnot, and then I can report back.
Thank you. And through the chair, just one more piece of information. The other challenge might be that Our Lady of Mount Carmel does not actually have any buses that service that school community. So not saying it can't be done, that just Stop Bar might need to be a little bit more creative when it comes to that, because it's not like we could just add students to an existing bus route that services that school. So I'm just, again, bringing that to your attention, but I'm hopeful we can do something to meet the needs of these families. It's heartbreaking to hear that they're missing school, and that is if they share that they are residing at the shelter. So sometimes we don't even know the address.
Seeing no other questions? Next order of business, Daniel, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, we move on to item E4, which is the French immersion site consolidation consideration and review. And once again, I invite Manager Cox to present the report.
Thank you. And once again, through the chair, as noted in the previous report, on an annual basis, the planning department reviews school boundaries. In addition, staff consider the location and configuration of programs of choice. The subject report is in relation to the potential of consolidating French immersion sites where students in grades 1 to 4 attend one school and are then directed to a sister site for grades 5 to 8. Currently, Dufferin Peel has 3 French immersion sites which host grades 1 through 8, 2 of which are located in Brampton and 1 of which is located in Mississauga. There are also 5 FI sites that host grades 1 through 4, 1 of which is located in Brampton, and 4 of which are located in Mississauga. And then there are 5 corresponding French immersion sites that host grades 5 through 8, 1 in Brampton and 4 in Mississauga. The planning department is currently undertaking a review of the viability to consolidate French immersion sites. There are a number of factors that need to be considered, which will include but are not limited to French immersion enrollment at each site, English track enrollments at each of the sites, the capacity of the school, and how French immersion consolidations will affect each of these items. In addition, planning will consider site sizes and general vehicular access to the site, including available on-street parking, since French immersion students are not bused and traffic tends to be higher at these schools. Based on these and other factors, staff will consider options to consolidate some or all of the FI sister sites, maintain the status quo, or reduce the number of French immersion sites through consolidation. Once the analysis is complete, if any changes are recommended, planning will conduct a community engagement through a community open house. This will be followed by a report to trustees on the outcome of the analysis, community engagement, and recommendations as a result. Planning staff are currently working on this analysis based on current October 31st enrollment data, and the intent is to have the information finalized in order to present to communities in late winter or early spring, with final recommendations presented to the Board of Trustees in late spring, early summer. We anticipate that any recommended changes to the structure of the program will commence in September 2026. However, that will also be assessed through the analysis. This concludes the presentation of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions trustees might have.
Thank you. Any, Trustee D'Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it's 3 years late, but better late than never. We're looking at 2026 for all the 4 recommendations, or are we going to do it in parts?
Through the chair, the earliest that we would likely make any recommendations for changes would be 2026, but that would be dependent on what the outcome is of the analysis and consultation.
I understand that, but so if it goes through, it will go through in 2026 for all the 4? Or are we looking at bringing it in stages? Like,
Through the chair, my apologies, I misunderstood the question. Yes, we would bring one report that would address all of the consolidations or status quo or whatever the case may be.
there be consultation with the trustees in terms of numbers before it happens, or will it come as a report to the board directly?
Through the chair, we would do it similar to what we would do for a new boundary. We would reach out to the trustees ahead of time.
Because the issue that we are facing with, I mean, I am facing with St. Angela Mercia and St. Ursula is communion and confirmation. Both these schools are in different parishes. So your grade twos receive communion in Guardian Angels, and St. Ursula goes to St. Jerome's for confirmation after they go to grade 7, from 5 onwards. So it's an issue and it's difficult to manage. At the same time, families that have siblings, one in grade 2 and one in grade 5, they are driving from one school to another. So it's been a request for 3 years and counting. I don't know how soon it's going to get done, but if this can be prioritized, it'll be nice.
Sorry, excuse me, through the chair, if I can, with that information, we'll definitely take that away. And I know we have a meeting scheduled, so we can review a number of these items. The one consideration and the reason why, the reason why in this particular case we don't move as quickly with the French immersion is a couple of things. One, French immersion is a program of choice. So you've chosen to go to the French immersion program. Two, while it does inconvenience a group of parents or guardians that may have to drop off a child at one school and a child at another school, there also needs to be consideration for all the English track students and the robustness of enrollment that this offers at both schools. So when you consolidate, without having any numbers in front of me or no specific schools, but if you consolidate the FI program into one school, then you've left a school that may have had 250 or 300 students down to 100, 150 students. And they're left wondering, well, what's going to happen to us now? Because now fundraising, all that type of stuff, that's all impacted. And then the receiving school is going to get not only their English track, but twice as many FI students because they're not bused. All of a sudden, there's that much more traffic congestion on the site. So while the parent that may have, and I can appreciate it, while the parent that may have to go to one school or another school, there's a lot of other factors around this. You lay over that the fact that we can't consult or close schools, we can't do any of that type of stuff. We don't want to make these decisions in a vacuum or too quickly, whereby handicapping a school, right? So this is where I think the analysis needs to be done to say maybe it's status quo for a little while, but there is a plan in place to move ahead. That's the other consideration. With that said, as I mentioned, we'll take away the different parishes is a bit of an anomaly in all of this. So, but we will definitely look at when we meet, taking that away and seeing if we can fast track one.
Go ahead, Trustee D'Souza.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. Now, when the recommendations come and say it's approved starting September 2026, are we looking at doing one grade at a time, or are we looking at moving the entire 5 to 8 English speaking to one school and the French immersion to the other school?
Through the chair, just to clarify, the 2026 would be the earliest date that we would look at it. So I don't want to commit that that is the actual date, but that would probably be the earliest date. But in terms of your question, that's definitely something that we would look at it in our analysis, whether we would phase it in or if we would just, for lack of a better term, rip off the Band-Aid and move everybody at once. So that would definitely be part of our analysis.
2026 is inshallah in my language.
Again, through the chair, I think you've raised a unique circumstance in what you brought up this evening, and we will take that away. And when we meet, we can discuss it in a little more detail.
Thank you. Welcome, Trustee Rhea Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. So I have, as we know, some parents at Divine Mercy. I share the school. I'm not the only trustee for the school. I've become the spokesperson, but I am not. I do share it with Chair Del Rosario and Trustee Valoria, who also get the feedback from the parents. They've been asking for consolidation of their FI program for over a year now. It was this time last year that they first started to communicate with us about the needs of their families. They really want their school to include the grades 5 to 8 that are currently housed at Our Lady of Mercy School. But then I've had Our Lady of Mercy parents. I'm the only trustee for that school. They're very satisfied with the quality of their FI program and at the sister school. And the enrollments are concerning when we look at those numbers as well. Our Lady of Mercy having 226, but 77 of them are FI. So I just wanted to ask, because I know it's been a year and the parents they've been patient, but they're patiently frustrated, if that's a term. Where are we in the process of looking at that? Because I feel like we're a year in already. And from tonight's report, we're potentially telling them we're looking at spring of 2025 before they get any news. So is there any way, not that any more schools are important, but is there any way we can get an update to those two school communities sooner than spring? Is that possible? Anybody?
Through the chair. We are working on the analysis now. There's just a process that we need to follow, and Trustee D'Souza did ask the question whether or not, we would be coming to the trustees first. So there's a process of doing the analysis, and there's a lot of things to look at because it's not just the numbers. And then we'd like to come out to trustees, and then we would go out to the community. We would establish some dates for the community. So we could probably look at, when I say late winter, we're thinking maybe February to go out to the community.
So through the chair, thank you for that. There already have been some conversations. We had, Associate Director Del Bianco and previous Superintendent of Planning as well come to both school communities. We met with both school councils. We heard from both communities in terms of the pros and the cons and their concerns and their feedback, and they were both very valuable sessions. So I feel like that step's already been done a year ago. And when I said they're patiently frustrated, for us to go back to the school community and say now February, and to be honest, I don't know what timeline would be appropriate, but I feel like this has already been in the works for over a year. And not that it can be rushed. The decisions certainly need time and consideration. I want to give voice to the fact that there's already been a year of back and forth and community consultation and shared with both communities. So is that at all feasible?
Through the chair. So what when I say we go out to the community, it would be the larger community. It wouldn't just be those two groups. So depending on what our analysis showed, we would do a larger community meeting that would encompass anybody that would be involved with any recommended changes. So it wouldn't be specific to Our Lady of Mercy or Divine Mercy. So maybe, you can share with them that we need to do this analysis so we can go out to the bigger group, because it's going to affect more, it may affect more than those two schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Corbett. No, he doesn't have his hand up. Yeah. Trustee Del Rosario, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sent my question to the staff, but I was just gonna, so are these the only locations for French immersion that we have?
Through the chair, that's correct. These are our only French immersion schools.
Interestingly enough, though, there's a lot more in the area towards the north, through the chair. And I noticed there's nothing in the south. Like you have Divine Mercy and Our Lady of Mercy And then down the road, you have St. Elizabeth Seton and St. Teresa of Avila. This is like a side-by-side area, and yet we don't have anybody in the south. So that's one question, and that's probably something that you could look at when you do this review. Is that possible, or?
Through the
Did you-
chair, absolutely. I can share that at the time, those were the schools that had available capacity to accommodate these programs, which is one of the reasons they may be all clustered in one area. And one of the parts of our analysis is looking at our cluster maps to see where all our French immersion students are coming from, to identify if we do have a large number coming from the east or the south or the west or the north.
Thank you. My second question, Mr. Chair. So talking about that, so right now, can parents enroll their children in FI anywhere in the board?
Through the chair, that is correct. There are no assigned boundaries for French immersion.
I do have, through the chair, I do have concerns with that, and I shared it with Associate Director Del Bianco before, because one of my schools that I represent basically have students coming from as far as Brampton to as far east of Mississauga, which now creates a major parking or because people get dropped off and get picked up. It's even worse on pickup time. And I had stood there with the counselor and my counterpart from Peel board, who also happens to have FI in their school. So we stood there because of the major concerns that the residents have been expressing. So what I'm asking is, when you do this review, can you please include that like a catchment area guideline that we have now? Because right now, if I'm coming from Brampton, I'm probably on the way to work, I'll drop off my kid there. And then on the way home, pick up my kid. So there's more cars than people. It's because they're coming from all over the place. So that is one of the major concerns. And I did say to the counselor, I'm sorry, because this comes from all over. But the principal has been handling it very well, but still a major issue. And to my third question, so please include that in your review. Yes, Madam Director.
Through the chair, if I can respond, when these programs were established, it was understood that parents were providing their own transportation. And to make them as accessible as possible to parents, we didn't put boundaries in. And you've given examples as to why. It might be a childcare issue after school. It may be that they live in Brampton but work in Mississauga, and so they're dropping children off, et cetera. And so the caution would be, if you're going to put those kinds of restrictions around, I'm not sure what the impact is going to be on some of the families in terms of accessibility.
Based on, through the chair, based on what I've seen, what I've heard, it's just because they like this school. It's not even they work there. I use that as an example to give a benefit of the doubt, but based on the people that I've spoken to in that area, that's not even what I'm getting.
So through the chair, we can include that as part of our analysis to try and understand why parents are, where there's a closer French immersion school, why they're seeking out a different one.
Yes, that would be wonderful. My last question, Mr. Chair, just going part of that problem, I know, I understand that we do not bus students for FI, but we do it for French, extended French. When I was standing at the corner with the counselor and my counterpart from PL, they bus both the extended French and FI. So the question is, why are we not able to bus our
Sorry,
kids?
Through the chair, when these programs were established, the only way it could be established, French immersion could be established, if there was not transportation provided. That meant that there was grandfathering if any other programs where busing was provided. Extended French was or had been provided busing prior to any of the French immersion classes or schools or programs offered. That's the history around it. Is that French immersion, in order to establish those programs, the trustees could not establish them because of the cost associated with busing. So that was the condition.
So while we're doing this review through the chair, is that something that we can also look at and see the possibility of providing busing? I know. I was told that they got the approval from the ministry to bus the French kids, the French immersion kids. This is what I was told by my counterpart. So I'm just sharing that. And if there's a possibility, not that it will help my community, because knowing they're coming from all over the place, they cannot be bused. But it might help a little bit. So to the chair, that's what I'm hoping maybe.
Through the chair, I recall a number of years ago, trustees asked for staff to bring forward a report on the approximate cost of busing French immersion. It was pretty cost prohibitive. And to your point around the appeal board getting approval, I don't think they need approval from the ministry to provide busing. They must have made a local decision, and perhaps maybe they had the funds to be able to do that at that time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead, Priya.
Thank you. And through the chair, just to Luz's point, when we look at what's available in terms of French immersion, I'm not going to ask about busing, but I am going to just bring to your attention, for those in my community that attend St. Elizabeth Seton and St. Teresa of Avila and Divine Mercy and Our Lady of Mercy, if they want to continue with French immersion in secondary, they have to go to Loyola, which is in the south, but quite far given their elementary locations. So that is the only location for them. Gonzaga has extended French, but for the students that want to continue in French immersion, they have to go quite far out of the wards, out of both wards 9 and 10, to go down to wards 8 for the nearest secondary FI.
Trustee Del Rosario?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I forgot another question.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, I'm a little bit, so you're telling us that the report will not come out until 2026, or is that the implementation date?
Through the chair, we intend to bring the report forward in 2025, but our recommendations wouldn't take effect anytime before 2026.
So it will be around 2026 that it will be implemented.
Through the chair, if that is the case, then correct. If we come up with options that recommend that, then yes, the earliest would be 2026.
Supposing, through the chair, just be a little bit of a curiosity here. Supposing some of these issues, you have found an answer or a solution or something, would we be able to implement that?
Through the chair, we can always look at that, absolutely. Nothing is off the table.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. See no other questions? Daniel, next order of business, please.
Sure, thank you. And through the chair, I think we're going to shuffle some people around here. We have our air conditioning and HVAC team at the back that are going to make their way to the front. They're hiding. So as they move up here, just so all the trustees know, when the boardroom's really hot.
We blame them.
That's right.
It's nice to put faces on the one to blame.
Yes, yeah. And I will, once they make their way up here, I will ask General Manager Mariah for formal introductions on everybody and what exactly they do. So as they do that, through the chair, we move on to item E5, which is the air conditioning feasibility study status report. It's an update on a report that was brought to trustees a number of years ago. And I believe we're all here. I invite Acting Superintendent Mariah to go through formal introductions and to walk us through the report.
Thank you very much, and good evening, trustees. Joining me this evening, we have James Fennick, on my immediate left, the Manager of Capital and Facilities Renewal Projects. David Bodzo, the Supervisor of Maintenance, HVAC, and Environmental Services. And the far left is Mark Lim, our Energy Management Engineer. And so their first time here, so they're kind of going to try to see if they can weather the storm.
Don't be shy, you're amongst family.
Okay, but we have brought this updated report on air conditioning systems and the status in our schools, which is somewhat of a hot topic. However, in 2016, we okay, well, people are awake. I like that. That's good. Yep. Yes, the Board of Trustees approved the motion that asked staff to undertake a feasibility study on the structural requirements of introducing air conditioning in all our elementary school facilities that were currently not fully air conditioned. And over several months, two independent consultants conducted site visits and did a lot of work. And 62 elementary schools were identified as having partial, which is less than 80% air conditioning, or no air conditioning at all. And then in 2017, the cost, we got some costing at that time to install air conditioning in all those schools and bring them up to at least 80% and up, quote unquote, fully. And at that time, the cost approximately was 35 to 40 million. And the timeline was around 10 to 15 years to implement based on being able to fund and being able to make arrangements for each school to be done. By a stroke of luck, in 2021, we received the COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream Grant called CIVRIS. And school boards received monies because of the COVID-19 epidemic. And we received 21 million as a board, and the majority of that grant was used to add or enhance air conditioning in 15 of our schools that had nothing at all. So no air conditioning, so we worked on them. To date, the majority of our schools now have substantially air conditioned, 96 of them. Learning areas, administrative areas, gymnasiums. And there are 55 elementary schools that have partial air conditioning, which is less than 70% of the facility. Some factors that are noted below, and beginning on the bottom of page 52, we've got some factors that were taken into account at the time by the consultants and some of our staff when we reviewed all of this. Approximate cost, for example. And that cost was to provide air conditioning to serve specific and/or localized areas of school facilities based on the feasibility of replacing units, retrofitting existing units, adding units. Costs would include engineering, etc. Now, it must be noted that our schools, a majority of our schools back in those days were not designed for air conditioning. Schools weren't designed for that. So that would impact the amount of work that had to be done and the amount of study and engineering. The implementation time frame on page 53, continuing on, that that looked at the time that it was going to take to complete the work. Equipment had to be selected, ordered, manufactured, delivered to the school, and then installed. And that would take some time. The level of disruptions to the schools, and there were 3 ratings: low, medium, and high. Low would be if a school only needed minor disruption to staff and students, and we could get work done after hours, weekends, and during some breaks. For example, retrofitting a mechanical unit that was on the rooftop that serviced an area of a school. Medium, where construction would cause disruption to the staff, students, and school operations over a period of months. So we would have to look at the majority of the work taking place during the summer months and during some breaks. And that would be if ventilation units are needed in specific rooms. And then, of course, high, where a school did not have any, significant disruption, areas were inaccessible, and there needed to be extensive modification to those buildings because of the design factor. Now, alternative options for the implementation of air conditioning, and there's a table 1 that's on page 54. We looked at a couple of things, and the study provided staff with information for 2 strategies. Option A would be to include air conditioning the aspects of all of the school, including classrooms, library, gymnasium, administrative areas in particular. And then option B, a strategy to establish a designated cooling station within all the schools that did not have substantial air conditioning in them, partial or no air conditioning, as we would say. Now, the electricity expenses in 2023, and we looked at that, and our energy engineer, Mark, is here. Our electricity expenses were $13.8 million in 2023. Fully air conditioning all the remaining schools that are not up to over 80%, it's projected to add another $1 million annually in energy costs, representing 7.2% increase. If we were to look at providing cooling station in gymnasiums only, option B, then we would be looking at adding $150,000 a year, a 1.1% increase. And for context, I know that this forecast draws on energy data from the 15 schools that received air conditioning in that 2021-2022 upgrade. And the projected impact of on energy management targets are outlined below. Full air conditioning, expected 3% annual increase in energy usage. Gymnasium cooling stations, moving on to page 54. Alternative B, expected 1% annual increase in energy usage. Both scenarios challenge our target of 1% annual reduction in energy usage as outlined in our 2024-2028 Energy Management and Conservation Plan. Now, the table 1 is there, and there's a breakdown of what it is status quo, what alternative A would mean, option A, and what option B would also mean in terms of costs increase to maintenance. We have 2 appendices that are attached, schools that had air conditioning added through service funding, and B, summary of the current status at each Dufferin Peel school. There's a note on the bottom of page 54. We talk about our outstanding renewal needs. because it's important to consider those. The board has funded approximately $33 million on an annual basis to address our estimated $350 million in outstanding renewal needs identified over the next 5 years. And that's a fairly conservative estimate. The $33 million that we do receive in annual renewal funding and school condition funding represents less than 10% of what our total amount of funds that we need to address our outstanding renewal needs. And that money is intended to address some of the following items at all our schools, like health and safety concerns, where issues identified, lighting, security, etc., maintaining facilities in good repair and functional status, replacement of aged, outdated, and malfunctioning infrastructure, windows, roofs, boilers, water mains, etc., addressing new regulatory and legislative compliance issues, undertaking alterations to facilities to accommodate new program offerings, and addressing infrastructure upgrades required to facilitate technological needs of our students. And last but not least, but replacing the life cycle mechanical equipment, the end of life of equipment that's been in our buildings for a substantial period of time. In conclusion, page 55, over the course of the past several years, Dufferin Peel has made it a priority to ensure that all our schools now have, at the very least, cooling station to serve staff and students on extreme weather days. Due to funding constraints and competing priorities, committing to provide every elementary school with full air conditioning is not something that's feasible at this time without additional funding from the Ministry of Education. Expanding cooling stations, however, at each of our schools that are not fully air conditioned, to include the gymnasium and other areas, that's a more feasible and achievable commitment at this time. And that concludes our summary report, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Acting Superintendent Mariah. Trustee Stefano Pascucci, then Trustee Mario Pascucci. Stefano, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the report. First, the numbers you're providing there, $40 million, $40 to $50 million, so on and so forth. Are those current numbers?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Right now, our current estimates for what remains that are not fully air conditioned or substantially air conditioned, we're up to $41 million or so is the estimate that we have at this point in time.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can I ask that you clean up the list, specifically Appendix B? The reason why is because, some of them locations say 8 classrooms in a porta pack, some say library, some, they actually have numbers. So for example, St. Jerome's, second floor classrooms, 5, kindergarten rooms, 2, library, office, so on and so forth. Then you go down to All Saints and it says, not all classrooms in library, not in gym and office. What does that tell me? It tells me basically nothing's there. So is there any way that we could clean up the list so that we have standardized type of numbers?
Yes, through the chair, yeah, we need to clean up the list and sort of make it more readable
Yeah,
for everybody.
Yeah.
So you could see what's what. We
because-
also need to define clearly what fully means, because in a building, fully is not every single space. In a building, there's storage rooms, there's areas in a building that air conditioning isn't provided, not just in our schools, but any building, there are areas that are not. But for our purposes, the word fully means that all the teaching areas, in particular gymnasiums, administrative areas, etc., have air conditioning. So that's something that we're, we can bring some clarification in issues and events.
Yeah, thank you. And as I said, like just trying to standardize it when you're giving me classroom numbers, additions, and so on and so forth, then all of a sudden you have not all classrooms and libraries and so on and so forth. So if you can just clean it up, that'd be great. Put in issues, events if you can. I'd appreciate that. Next, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you. Many years ago, you would have remembered that I've asked if there's any way that we can get more trees on our property. If we can't cool the inside, you can at least cool the area around us. So if you can't get out the whole classrooms into the gyms, have them go underneath the canopy of a tree and sit there and learn something. Now, this was, I was told back in 2000 and, I don't remember when that was, but prior to the last election, that it wasn't feasible. We start looking at that again. We have high schools that have greenhouses that, I know Gonzaga has a greenhouse because that's where I take my kids to go swimming. So if there's any possibility that we can use like a greenhouse at one of our high schools to grow seedlings and then grow them, and it's a great way for kids to learn, especially if every junior kindergarten plants one in junior kindergarten, and grade 8 they see it grow. A legacy kind of thing. So if we can look at that again, that would be appreciated. And finally, Mr. Chairman, if it's possible, just one last thing. The government's got money to spend. We gave everybody $200 a person to, over the next little bit. Why can't we, can we ask for some more money? Is that possible? I know we do it all the time. But again, I've said this before, seniors have AC now. They're vulnerable. Our kids are vulnerable as well, same with our teachers. So if we can start asking for more of that, then that'd be appreciated. Thank you. And thank you, staff, for the report. It was very informative before my time, so it was good to see what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Stefano Pascucci, trustee Mario Pascucci, then trustee Bria Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I asked through you to staff, Richard, a question that was brought out years ago when the air conditioners units were being planned and were considered. Two things were thought there might be a hindrance to it, which I still understand it still happens. One is the size of the air duct return, and the second one is electrical going into that particular school to be able to service some machinery. Is that still a very serious issue to work with, or is that substantially minimized because of the list that we have?
Through the chair, that's correct. Every facility is different. So for example, if we're taking a look at one of your schools like St. Basil, the existing ductwork was a certain size.
Right.
So we can't go in there and replace all the ductwork. So what we did is through COVID, we actually got SIVERS money to increase the unit, add air conditioning, and do some changes. So there are different types of equipment that we can install where schools have limited ductwork. We can add what we call VRF technology, where they're like units that go on the wall and they're all centrally controlled. So we are looking into all these new factors. One of the biggest things that our department has been working together with Richard to do is boots on the ground to do a site condition assessment. We found that with this report in 2016, there were some inconsistencies from some of the schools that said they had air conditioning and didn't. So what we're doing now is we're doing site visits with our staff that is trained and also gets the data properly. A lot of time these engineers go off plans and they make mistakes. So we're doing that also. So.
Thank you very much. Exactly what I'm looking for. So if any new report that comes out, could we please isolate the reasoning? If it is the idea of, because I've told parents this, and this is what I was told by staff, the idea is that because of these particular hindrances, that's the concern we have. Again, like Stefano said earlier, trustee Pascucci there, he turned around, he made a comment about the report. This was an exceptional report, a very difficult report to write, I'm sure, but it's done an incredible job, and I want to thank you very much for highlighting this. I will share it with my community so they're aware of what's happened. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Pascucci, trustee Bria Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. So on page 60, it says St. Simon's Stock the school is fully air conditioned. However, the AC in the school gymnasium is not currently working and it needs to be replaced, and the board is aware. Unfortunately, the AC wasn't working for the June 2024 graduation, and it wasn't working for a city permit for a community event that was in October. on a very warm night. And the plant department had informed the school administrator that it will not have air conditioning in the school gym for its June 2025 graduation because it will be replaced in the summer of 2025. And so I just wanted to share, unfortunately, that means that the school and the families will incur extra expenses for graduation because they will have to book a venue outside of the school. Historically, they've always held their graduation in the school gym. It's a smaller community. So I'm asking if it's, I know this is part of a larger work order at that school, but can we prioritize getting that AC replacement done? It's November right now. We need it for June, specifically for the graduation ceremony. Could that AC done in the Christmas break, the March break, if possible, so that that gym could be ready and air conditioned by the graduation for 2025?
Through the chair, yeah, we are working, as you mentioned, Trustee Corbett, it's a large project. There are a number of things. We have boilers to replace there that are at the end of life. We have that. So that is one component of things, and we are in a position to sort of work on the different components, fortunately. So our goal would be to do our best to get that for the June graduation so that they don't have to have another year.
Thank you. And I have a few more follow-up questions, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Page 57 of the report, it indicates that St. Richard has the kindergarten and library only air conditioned, plus the 2000 edition has air conditioning, but actually the FDK does not have air conditioning. And there are still 5 classrooms without AC. And on page 59 of the report, it says Our Lady Mount Carmel is fully air conditioned. So thank you. Thank you for the gym air conditioning that took 6 years, but it's fantastic. Lots of positive feedback from that school community. But my question is, there were still some outstanding items to make that school fully air conditioned, particularly the kitchen and the tech areas. So were those areas done when the gym was done? Or is that incorrect, saying the school is fully air conditioned?
Through the chair, to answer your first question in regards to St. Richard, FDK is not air conditioned. And that's what I was trying to reiterate in regards to the information sometimes that we get. But in regards to Mount Carmel, for the kitchen and shops, we do not air condition the kitchens. We do not air condition the shops. Now, there are maybe 1 or 2 schools that had a heat pump system that might. So for example, Gonzaga does not have air conditioning in the shops or the kitchen. Mount Carmel, same thing with Thomas Aquinas. The reason why we don't air condition kitchens is we have a large volume of exhaust air from the kitchen appliances, and we have to supply 100% fresh air. And when you try and air condition
David, can you speak into the mic, please?
Sorry. When you try and air condition a kitchen, you get a lot of humidity and it's dangerous. So usually kitchens are not air conditioned. The halves are, but not the kitchen.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Trustee D'Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this report, I was wondering did we use an external consultant to create this report for us?
Through the chair, yes, there were 2 consultants used, MCW, and I believe it was Laurel that did the report for us. So they were in the buildings, doing the actual inventory of the equipment and referring to whatever drawings they had available.
And this is the quality of the report? I mean, all over the place? We paid somebody to do this report?
Well, the part that we
No,
did was
they didn't
perfect.
write
The
the
part
report.
that they did,
No.
not so much.
No.
David?
So through the chair, just to clarify, they didn't write the report. They put the background information together for the report.
We can discuss this, Daniel.
And we'll
Thank
add it
you.
to the list.
Seeing no other questions, next order of business, Daniel.
Thank you.
So-
Through the chair, we move on to section F, reports from committees and administration requiring action.
Sorry,
F1 is,
Daniel, we have that add-on extension excursion, E E6.
oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, through the chair. Yes, we're on to item E6, which is the extended excursion report. And I invite Superintendent Drago Radic to present the report.
Through the chair, thank you, Associate Director Del Bianco. He makes sure he pronounces my name as my father would have. But anyways, thank you. Good evening. And through the chair, the purpose of the report you'll find on the taupe sheet for receipt this evening is to summarize the presentations made by schools to the Extended Excursion Committee. The Extended Excursion Committee met on November 6th and November 11th to receive presentations of proposed excursions. The school principal and the excursion leader attended these presentations for each school. There were several presentations made, all by secondary schools. There were no presentations by any other elementary schools at this time. The purpose of submitting the extended excursion application forms and presentation is to ensure that there are proper rationale, documentation, itinerary, budget, and approved tour operation information. Our Catholic identity is reflected in all the itineraries of these proposed trips, including an expectation that all students and supervisors attend Catholic Mass on Sundays during the trip. Some will be attending the Saturday Vigil as they are traveling on Sundays. All procedures are reviewed, adhered to, and communicated to students, parents, guardians, supervisors, and family of school superintendents. The appropriate steps are in place to ensure that students have the opportunity to make up any assignments or assessments that occur while missing instructional days during the extended excursion. All of the excursions that were submitted adhere to the stipulation that they do not miss more than 2 instructional days. There is a typo on Appendix A on the bottom one, St. Marcellinus. It should read 0 missed days, 0 missed school days, because May 16th is a PD day and May 19th is a Victoria Day. The appropriate levels of supervision are put into place and adhered to according to board policy and procedure. All students' families are required to purchase cancellation insurance as well as mandatory medical coverage for the duration of the extended excursion. And I draw your attention to Appendix A, which is the summary of all the school's trips that presented in front of the Extended Excursion Committee to take place this school year, and there are a few that are slotted for the following school year. That concludes the report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Superintendent. Trustee Del Rosario, Trustee Maria Corbett, Trustee Stefano Pascucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed these are all visiting the churches in different parts of the states and Paris, I think, right? Just looking at, through the chair, just looking at the St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, the cost of the trip per student, is this the cost of bus and hotel, or?
That is the, sorry, through the chair, the costs that are displayed on the Appendix A are the cost per student for the entire school trip, including busing, hotels. Some of them have meals included, some don't. It depends on the tour company. And if it's a overseas trip where they're flying, it also includes airfare.
As a follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Good.
So looking at the St. Patrick Cathedral visit, I have a variety of costs for each of them. Can you give me an idea why? Because one is over $2,000, one is $1,900, then you've got $1,300, and then $1,500. This is all it's kind of the same area. And I would have thought closer to the clock, right, to each other?
Through the
Dr.
chair, can I just
Mazzarato?
provide clarification? The identification of the church is the church that they're going to attend on the Sunday. That's not the total purpose of the trip. That's where they're going to have Sunday Mass or Saturday Vigil. So the difference in the cost of the trips may be associated with what sites they're going to go see, etc.
See, could I follow up?
ahead, Luz.
Through the chair. I think previously when we had this presented to us, it's a little misleading. I'm like, I know this is the Sunday Mass. Could we get information of what the purpose of the trip is? Like, if this is an extended excursion to have sightseeing or music event in New York, I just want to have an understanding. 'Cause this to me, it looks like I'm just going to Mass in New York and the rest are, I'm going shopping.
Through the chair, we can certainly do that. The majority of the trips are cultural trips. Some are organized by social science department where they're history-based trips. Some of them are, some of the trips are organized through business departments. Some of them are organized through drama and dance. So yes, we can certainly have a column where we can describe what the specifics of the trip or the rationale, the reason for the trip is. But there,
I
but
appreciate that.
and sorry, and with that, the associated costs, as you can see, there are a number of trips to New York, but some of them include Broadway shows, some of them do not. So that's why there is a slight change in cost depending on the trip.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would really appreciate seeing that in the future because it gives us an understanding what the purpose of the trip. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So you'll notice Our Lady of Mount Carmel and St. Aloysius Gonzaga, it's now presented as a joint trip. And each of those initially were approved as individual trips, but Our Lady of Mount Carmel did not have enough enrollment to support that trip. So the itineraries have been adjusted to align with Gonzaga's and ensure the trip can go ahead for both school communities. I had a number of parents call me. They were very anxious. They were going to lose their deposits if the reapproval process was delayed. They were worried they would miss out on the trip altogether if the joint trip wasn't approved, which had implications for Gonzaga as well. And I was informed that the tour company indicated that after November 15th, they could not guarantee that their flights would be together. So my question is, given that it's November 12th, is there a next step in this process and how soon will the schools be notified that they can go ahead?
And the chair, that these were all approved today by exec. So and specifically the urgency around ensuring that it was approved before that cutoff date.
Thank you. So through the chair, how soon will the families of the school communities be notified?
Through the chair, the principals of those schools, all the schools will be getting email tonight saying once this meeting is adjourned that the trips are approved and they can go ahead and plan.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Stefano Piscucci?
Thank you very much. To you, Mr. Chairman, how many companies do we have providing these type of excursions? I don't need an actual number, 5, 6, 1, 2, and
Through the chair, I don't know the exact number. I can name 3 or 4 off the top of my head, but there's less than 10, more than 2.
Through the chair, we'll put it in initiative.
That's all I was
events.
asking for. Thank you. The reason why I ask is because, and you mentioned it before that some trips, specifically New York, I'm trying to figure out what's going on in New York throughout the year. But, specifically in New York, you have St. Michael's, October 15th to 19th, Cardinal Leger, October 16th to 19th, almost a $500 difference. Is trying to figure out, because if it's only one service provider, then obviously they're doing something different. But if it's 2 service providers and they have a very similar itinerary, then $500 would be a big difference for a family who's trying to scrape to get their kid out to go to New York or go somewhere and experience something.
Through the chair, again, much of the distinctions between the trip is based on what they are doing there and the type of activities they're going to do. Also, depending on the tour company, some schools stay in a hotel in New Jersey, some stay a little closer to New York, some of them have 1 meal, some of them have 2 meals. So they are relatively close, but a $400 or $500 difference over a few days. You add a Broadway show and those numbers change drastically.
Thank you. And actually, that brings me to my next request, I guess. As per what Trustee Rosario mentioned about having a reason, the trip? So is it cultural, or are you building houses, or are you just going shopping? I'm not saying that's the reason, but can we also have an itinerary provided to us as well? So that when I have a family if I'm at a school, they say, well, St. Mike's is going there for $2,000, why can Leslie do it for 1,500? I can say, well, yeah, there's something different.
We can, through the chair, we can certainly provide a brief description. Part of that process, when they present the extended excursion committee, is to have curriculum ties. So those curriculum ties are embedded in the application form. Some of them are lengthier than others, but they're there. But we can certainly add a column to just give you a rough idea of the purpose, if it's for history, if it's for phys ed, SHSM, if it's for arts, dance, culture, those types of things. But we can certainly do that.
But even the itinerary as well. Because I know that they probably have to provide you with an itinerary where they're staying,
Yeah,
what they're doing, day one, we're in Nice, day two, we're in Paris, whatever, if it's possible to have that as well.
through the chair, we can certainly do that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions? Daniel, next order of business.
Thank you. And through the chair, now we move on to item F, reports from committee and administration requiring action. F1 is the approval to fundraise for outdoor equipment. And I invite Executive Superintendent Chair Packett to present the report.
Thank you. Through the chair, we have had a secondary school come forward and request approval to engage in a fundraising initiative. And in closer work with the school, the purpose of their fundraising, which is a requirement to share transparency with your community of what you're doing, they are looking to fundraise in order to procure bleachers for their outdoor field. The current fundraising gap has a section on accountability and transparency, specifically for schoolyard improvement, facility upgrades, or sporting facility upgrade projects that are not specifically funded by the ministry or by grants. And part of the prior approval process is that any project that would cost more than $50,000 that a school is going to fundraise for requires approval through the Board of Trustees. So to allow the school to start to proceed with these fundraising activities, we bring that forward this evening to get a recommendation from the Administration and Finance Committee to take this forward for approval from the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Any questions on the report? Seeing none, move the motion. Whose school? Moved by Sean Xavier. No questions I saw, so that all those in favor, and let me read it, that the Administration and Finance Committee recommend the Board of Trustees approve the request from Robert F. Hall Catholic Secondary School to fundraise for the outdoor equipment with a potential cost over $50,000. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Daniel, next order of business.
Thank you. Through the chair, we move on to F2, which is policy 5.30, supply chain management. And once again, I invite Executive Superintendent Chair Packett to present the report.
Thank you. And through the chair, like similar reports, I am not presenting this report alone this evening. I would like to introduce the staff that will be doing most of the presentation. Superintendent of Financial Services, Scott Keys, is here behind me, as well as our Manager of Supply Chain Management, Clayton Fernandez. So we bring this policy forward to this evening, knowing that Policy 5.3 was just previously brought forward to the Board Bylaw and Policies Review Committee. At that time, it was very time sensitive, and we needed to ensure we had language regarding the AODO requirements. So we brought it forward alone and made changes to Policy 5.3. There's no more changes recommended tonight to the policy, although we're bringing it forward because we have changes to recommend for the GAP, the General Administrative Procedure. So I'm going to hand this over, and Superintendent is going to walk you through the changes. And I know, keep in mind, there's a lot of markup, but the actual changes aren't as many as you think with the markup. But I'll hand this over to Superintendent Keys.
Thank you, Executive Superintendent Charapaka, and through the chair. So earlier this year, the Government of Ontario updated their BPS procurement directive that included revisions to the procurement thresholds and additional requirements to support both procurement centralization and the government's Building Ontario Business Initiatives Act, or the BOBBY Act, which allows public sector entities to give preference to Ontario businesses in certain procurement processes, but under a certain threshold. This new act is not expected to have a big impact on our board, as many of the goods and services we procure are available to us through vendors or suppliers within our area. Boards along the Manitoba and Quebec borders would most likely be impacted by this new act. GAP 706, supply chain management, as mentioned, is being brought forward to address the changes to the BPS procurement directive, provide overall updates to language and references, and propose edits to reflect best practices in procurement processes. And as mentioned, although the track changes version looks like a Google Maps during rush hour, most of the updates were formatting, reorganization of information for ease of use, and clarifications to existing procedures. I will bring your attention to a few of the main highlight or proposed revisions. The competitive procurement thresholds are increased to $121,200 to align with BPS procurement directive. You will see this reflected in section 4 on page 101 of the agenda package, which is the clean version. The thresholds which are prescribed under the BPS procurement directive are subject to change when they are changed in the directive. And in order to be consistent, we would adjust the thresholds without having to amend this general administrative procedure annually. Changes to existing competitive procurement thresholds for non-school-based departments to reflect increased costs and volumes of goods and services are reflected on Table 2A on page 101. And this outlines the procurement process for, like I said, the non-school-based departments. And provides flexibility for departments to obtain their own quotes in collaboration with supply chain management department. Departments must reach out to supply chain prior to inviting vendors to submit quotes. Section 5.14 and 5.15, starting on page 112, provides clarification on the component debriefing, including the specific steps in the bid protest dispute resolution process. Additional clarifications are also provided in section 6 on page 113, highlighting the ability to potentially suspend a vendor and or remove them from the pre-qualified list or vendor of record in extreme circumstances. So, Mr. Chair, that concludes this report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Keys. Questions? Seeing none? Move the motion that the Administration and Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees that policy 5.30, supply chain management, be approved and adopted as amended. Moved by Trustee D'Souza. All in favor? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Daniel?
Thank you. And through the chair, we're on to our final report of the evening, F3, which is the revised procedural bylaw. And I invite Executive Superintendent Vecchierino to present the report.
Continuing through the chair, good evening to the trustees. The brief report that I will be sharing with you this evening begins on page 123 of your agenda package. Recent legislative changes, in particular to Ontario Regulation 463/97, have called on school boards to amend their bylaws governing trustee attendance and participation in meetings, including physical and electronic attendance. Apologies for the typo at the top of the discussion section in the report. So governing physical and electronic attendance requirements. The bulleted list shown on page 1 of the report outlines these changes. I will go over them with you. Trustees are now required to attend physically regular board meetings unless virtual attendance is approved under the relevant bylaws or policies. For regular board meetings, trustees must attend in person unless the chair grants permission to attend virtually based on a specific list of criteria outlined in the regulation and in the bylaw. The vice chair may approve requests for virtual attendance in the absence of the chair. The chair cannot approve virtual attendance if it would result in fewer than one trustee, in addition to the chair, being physically present in the meeting room. And the Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board may refuse virtual participation for a trustee unless approval is granted by the chair. Again, all in compliance with Regulation 46397. In addition to these changes, one more change has been made to the bylaw regarding the fact that no later than May the 15th of every calendar year, the Board of Trustees must establish a committee tasked with conducting the performance appraisal of the Director of Education. This committee must be composed of no fewer than 3 and no more than 7 board members, and one of whom shall be elected by a majority of the committee to act as chair. One additional note before I take any questions on the report. On page 134 of your agenda package, in preparation for this meeting, we noted that there is an incorrect reference, a historical incorrect reference, but we plan to amend it as of this evening and correct it going forward. Inappropriately naming committees in sections A to E on page 134 as committees of the whole. They are not committees of the whole, and we are proposing that in finalizing the changes to the bylaw, that phrase, committees of the whole, be struck out. As mentioned earlier, I'd be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Trustee Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, just a housekeeping item. Page 141, 142, 143, can we clean it up? Just, if you take a look at bottom of one page, 141, and then 142 has like 2 lines, which, and then a whole blank page, and then 143 has D and E are actually part of that section. It's just housekeeping, that's all.
Through the chair, I believe that the trustee is looking at the marked up version, but we will ensure that the clean version, which is posted to the website, reflects the suggestion that was just made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and through the chair, it's not just the marked up version. I can find it in the clean version as well.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, we will ensure as the other changes are made that that's reflected.
Trustee D'Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was, did we get any clarification from the ministry with regard to trustee is sick or traveling? I mean, if a trustee is traveling and they cannot attend the meeting virtually on board business?
Through the chair, what has been identified is that at this time they have no intention of changing the regulation for September, because come September, if you miss one meeting, you vacate your seat. But there was some confusion, quite frankly, in information that was sent around the interpretation of virtual that we're still waiting for. But what this procedural bylaw does reflect is the current regulation.
We are still awaiting clarifications from the ministry.
Through the chair, there was a representative at the ministry at one of our regional meetings where there seemed to be a different interpretation from that representative of the ministry that was going to go back. But we were also advised that there is no intention of changing the regulation.
So the interpretation was, if
The
it's virtual,
interpretation would give one to believe that there was more flexibility around virtual attendance, but that's not really what the regulation says. So that individual who was new to the position was going to go back and seek clarification. So I will follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Trustee Mario Pascucci? Speak into the mic, please.
Thank you, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of minutes of your indulgence on this here. Tonight, if we go under the new system as of September next year, I would have to vacate my seat. Tonight's my uncle's 30th, 1 month after we say a mass. And I can't go there because I'm here. Not that, you have to choose in this situation, but if it's an elected position and I have a family issue, et cetera, there's very little leeway. So the idea of being fair to anybody that sits around this table is not fair. And recognizing your trustees are in transit, by doing this specifically in this case here where you have 3 dates, it also precludes anybody having a vacation. Because what happens is that if I wanted to have a vacation more than 3 weeks, I can't, unless it's July, I guess. Because what happens is that at this point, I have to be here, fine, but I'm also entitled to call in and participate. So anyway, I know I'm preaching to the converted here on this one, but it's something that we should not let go. I think, I know, do we have to approve this tonight, Madam Director?
Through the chair, what you would be approving is a recommendation to go to the Board of Trustees for final approval. And just for clarification, the restriction around in-person and vacating your seat only applies to regular meetings of the board or committees of the whole. And your committees of the whole, for the most part, for this board, is in camera. So your in-camera meetings, not your committee meetings, not your standing committee meetings. That's why it's important that accuracy is articulated on page 134. Your faith and program, your admin and finance, bylaw and policy. All of those committees are not committees of the whole. They just happen to be committees where all trustees sit on them, but they are not under Robert's Rules of Order defined as committee of the whole. So the in-person is only about the regular board meetings, and committees of the whole, which typically happen at your regular board meetings when you dissolve into a committee to deal with in-camera items.
Okay.
The rest of your other meetings allows for virtual attendance without having to fall within those parameters.
Where's the element, and this, I'm not asking this question as rhetorical, but for you, Mr. Chairman, where's the fairness in this situation? If our friends down in Queen's Park would work 3-4 months a year and then take time off and visit their constituency, well, what can't I do that? And well, obviously, because as a trustee, you don't have that much involvement, but in many cases, but the fact of the matter is there's the idea of imbalance here. It's curious that we have to ask somebody who, if I wanted to be away because I'm sick and I have to prove it to you, I have to go to the doctor's office, which even the premier at that time, and I think the medical association says, look, too many people are coming here just for notes. And as a result, I would have to line up at a doctor's office saying, can you please give me a note so this happens? And again, it causes that difficulty, if you will. I don't have a problem with the idea that my attendance at most meetings are pretty darn good, especially the boards, but there's people here that, in fact, and I'm not going to speak for anyone here, but people here that have different schedules. They join the board, this board or a board, knowing that this is the game plan we have to use. The earliest they could, there's 2 problems here. One is the current 3-person situation or 3-meeting for that situation. The second one is the 1-person situation. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring this back for fulsome discussion, number 1, and I'd like this also considered to be sent to the OXTA for consideration and discussion for the simple reason that I want to make sure that they are aware of it, and I am sure they are. I'm sure they could probably meet with somebody at the municipal level, or sorry, the ministry level. So I'd like to make that, Mr. Chairman, I don't need a motion, Madam Chair, do I? You offer to ask.
Through the chair, I just want to understand what your
Sure, please.
request is. The procedural bylaw is here this evening specifically because your organizational meeting of the board is coming up, and your meeting where you determine representation on various committees will be coming up as well on December 10th. And there's some time sensitivity in terms of ensuring that you're complying with regulations around that. So that's why it's here this evening, with the intent of bringing it forward to the board meeting for final approval. That doesn't, I mean, you need to comply with the regulation, and that's what this procedural bylaw is doing. It doesn't mean that you don't continue your advocacy through the avenues that you can, i.e. maybe bringing a resolution to Oxta. You're not the only Board of Trustees that have concerns of what's coming for September 1.
That's what I was
Um,
referring to.
So I think those are two separate things. And that would be my recommendation, that you consider approving this as a recommendation to go to the Board of Trustees to ensure that you're compliant with regulations and you deal with the time sensitivity around specifically the Director's Performance Review Committee so that that can be reflected when you're choosing representation on committees at December 10th.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Madam Director. I will do that. I'm going to ask formally a motion to ask for a motion to go to Oxta, but you know, the interesting thing is that there's certain people out there that just work as a trustee. That's fine, but they have a job during the day. And we make a whole $17,000 a year. We're just not trying to belittle that because there's a lot of boards out there that make a lot less than that. York Catholic, I believe it was, when trustee passed away, the cost was over $200,000 to run a by-election. So the question is, who's going to pay for that? So anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff on this. So Madam Chair, or Mr. Chairman, I will make the motion that this issue be forwarded to be addressed to be forwarded and addressed by the Oxta to have a discussion with this, or I don't know how you want to word it, Madam Director.
Well, through the chair, if you do want it as part of the resolutions that are going to go
Yes, I
forward
do.
in January, we can just take it as direction. I don't believe they require a motion. Typically, we solicit input from trustees so that we can support you in developing resolutions to
Let
go
this
to
be
the
the first
AGM.
motion. Let this be the first motion for consideration. Mr. Chairman, I so move the motion be considered for the Oxta list of motions for direction.
It's not a motion.
It's
Direction.
It's a direction.
direction to prepare a motion that we as a board will vote on for moving it further into the Ontario Catholic School Trustees meetings. That make sense?
Direction to prepare a resolution that will come
Resolution,
forward.
sorry, yes.
Okay.
Trustee Del Rosario?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to in response to Trustee Pascucci's comment about Oxta, I think when we first discussed this at a board meeting, we did discuss that this be brought to the Oxta board, and we did. And true enough, it's not just us that's having a problem on the interpretation, and some of the other trustees that sits at the board of Oxta also have jobs that they're very concerned. And the other concern was, why is the chair being put in a position where they have to say, proving the trustees' attendance, you know? So I will follow up before we do the resolution, because I believe there's already a paper that was sent to the Ministry of Education, because there has been discussions right after that with the new minister, Minister Dunlop at the time. So if you wouldn't mind, let me follow up and then I'll see where it's at and then we'll proceed with the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, to this
To
point,
that point.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a problem with that, but there should be noted right away that in fact, this board is under consideration, is considering sending a motion. So I would like to ask you to come back, of course, with the report or summarize something that can be shared with ourselves and the public. I feel like this is almost like a muting opportunity for the ministry. But that being said, I'd like to suggest that the issue be brought back to us once you address it. Look into it at the Oxta conference.
Definitely.
If I may ask the director, Mr. Chairman, does that give you enough leeway?
Through the chair, yes.
Could I ask one more question?
Let's,
please?
Luz?
Through the chair, do we still have that right now, before September 1st, 2025? We still have that 3 absences for the board meeting, 3 consecutive absences. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. And it only applies to your regular meetings of the Board of Trustees.
So how come it's not showing in here?
Through the chair, it is.
Is it in the full document?
It is in your procedural bylaw. It does reference the three.
Three consecutive
Yeah.
board
Page
meetings.
150, through the chair, I think it's page 151. I'm just scrolling there.
Speak to that, Mr. Chairman? Speak to that, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you. No, I understand that's we have now is three, but this is after September 25th. You only have to miss one.
Fine.
Through the chair,
Yes.
you're correct. So this procedural bylaw will come back closer to September 25th to make that change.
20 to 25.
September 2025.
So, may I say
Yeah,
something,
go-
Mr.
go ahead.
Chair?
I'm just thinking of how stupid this is.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I have to
Yes.
go to the hospital because I broke a leg. I can't attend the board meeting, and now I lose my seat because I broke my leg? What morons are running this place? Not this
Exactly.
place, but, sorry.
Through the
Yeah.
chair, that would be a reason that you would be able to be excused from that board meeting.
Luz, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say that is actually one of the major reasons that the Oxta board is lobbying the Minister of Education. Because who are they to remove the elected official?
It's gonna pay for the replacement.
Well, first question is we're elected by the people. So how could they justify removing you when you have been elected by the people? So this is, I'm just sharing with you what's been done and discussed at Oxta. And we're all on it, just to tell you. We're all on it because it's just so ridiculous regulation that was. So we're on it.
Mario, are you
Thank you.
finished?
Pretty sure it was on. I finished with it.
Trustee Stefano Pascucci?
I find it extremely funny that they're choosing to give us one, not even one chance to be sick or whatever it is, take care of a sick individual, when over 12 MPPs have missed more than 2/3 of the votes last year, including the premier. So I'm really finding funny that we can't even go to take care of like my daughter if she's sick for whatever reason, or if I'm on board business because the school that I represent has created something and I'm there to represent the board to parents, to my electorates, sorry, to people who elected me, where I lose my seat. Meanwhile, our premier and 12 other of his people in his party can miss 2/3 of the vote. Absolutely. I don't understand.
Through the chair, can I please clarify though, some of the examples that you're using would be legitimate reasons for missing and it would not result in you vacating your seat. Better examples might be vacation or work.
So if I'm told that I have to go travel for work, for my job, that is a full-time job, because I'm not making a wage here that I can sustain my family on, I'm now required to vacate my seat because I'm supplying for my family.
That would be an example of.
Or if
something
I'm on
that-
board
Hold on,
business,
Hold on. Let the director answer the question.
sorry, go ahead.
And as far as, I know you're going to go board business around schools, but if you look at the Education Act does not require trustees to visit schools or attend school events. So in its strictest interpretation, that would not be viewed as being on board business.
Okay, then with that said, Madam Director, through you, Mr. Chairman, I expect every principal, every administrator to look at the master calendar and ensure they don't make one meeting on any day that we have something happening at the board.
Through the chair, and we've sent that explicit message to the schools that they are absolutely not to book
Still
anything
happens.
on it. Well, I will
Let her
continue to
finish.
I will continue to reinforce that, but we are making it explicitly clear to administrators that nothing is to be booked on a Tuesday night.
That also includes graduations.
Through the chair, that's
Because-
correct.
And I'm not complaining, but I had 2 years in a row, I had graduations on a Tuesday of the last board meeting of ours. And I don't expect them to change it for myself.
No, 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 yeah.
Trustee Pascucci?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, the frustration is amazing here. And I'd say this very respectfully. I have to expect the chair or vice chair to make a ruling that if I am valid or not valid for that seat. And that's not fair to that individual by any stretch. We got a board here that runs rather nicely. Everybody's got courtesy. We tend to get a little hot around the neck collar sometimes, but the fact is we're still respectful. There are other boards out there that don't even look at each other. So here you have a board that's functional and a relationship with a singular purpose to provide a good Catholic education. Now, anyway, so I just want to mention that in that the direction I offered a few minutes ago, it should be also considered that in fact, if there should be any litigation on the side of Oxta. And I'm sure the other associations, be it the French, public and Catholic, and English public, and of course Catholic, would be considered maybe to move forward with some type of legal move on this one. This affects fundamental representation at its best. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, all in favor of the motion before us that the Administration and Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees that the revised procedural bylaw be approved and adopted as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. There's no notice of the motions. Questions asked often by trustees. Ariel, then Bria, then Lou.
Mr. Chairman, just a simple item here in the sense of issue. I'd like to readdress or relook at the bylaw as a result, regarding uniforms for schools. So can we ask staff, please, to bring that to the next not ANF bylaw meeting, I guess? Is that
The
okay?
chair will bring it in January.
That's
when
fine.
the next
It is,
bylaw and policy is.
Yeah, we do the bylaw and policy so we can take a good firm look at it. Okay?
You know, to that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To that point regarding the uniform for schools, can we please ensure that when you say uniform, we understand that uniform is as an individual shows up to school. That includes shoes, sweaters, pants, shirt. And I can explain to you after, offline. Thank you.
Thank you. Ariel, you're done?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Bria, go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair. So my question's about the digital report cards. So I'm pleased we've moved to the digital report cards for both panels, elementary and secondary, and the electronic timetables for secondary. So thank you very much for the ICT staff that supported that very ambitious achievement. The digital progress reports were sent out today for our elementary students, and they went to the board student email accounts. And the challenge associated with that for parents is that they have to log on to their child's board's email accounts, or they have to help support their child to log on to the email account. I don't know many kindergartners that check their board emails often. And sometimes it requires a password reset, which can only be done through the school unless you've registered for the password reset tool. So there's some digital challenges associated with it. There's some delays in accessing the information and a lot of frustration on the part of parents. And the report card link expires after 14 days. So all that to say, love the fact that it's electronic. However, our coterminous board uses PowerSchool as well, and they provide the elementary report cards to parent emails, not students. And their secondary report cards go to both parents and students. So is this something that our ICT department can work on? I know I've sent them a lot of work over the years, and I'm very grateful for what they've done. Can they make some magic happen with this request?
So through the chair, it's on the work plan for the Power School team to include the parents. Just to clarify, our coterminous board in the past ran their own in-house student information system or software, which they already pre-programmed to send to the parents. So they've just transitioned to Power School, and they'll go through the same issues we're going through. But it's done in collaboration with Power School, and it's a high priority for us. I don't have an exact date yet, but when we get closer to that date, I'll share it with trustees.
Thank you. And one more question, Mr. Chair, to this point, is that also in Growing Success, it does mention that the alternative report card will accompany the provincial report card, and this actually isn't the case. The alternative report cards are going to parents through DP Lite, and the report cards are going to the students. So is that something that can also be added to the ICT agenda?
Sure. Through the chair, it's already in consideration to have them jointly go out through Power School.
Thank you.
Consolidate it all onto one platform.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bria. Thank you, Bria. Trustee Del Rosario?
Sorry.
Please do. White?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Betcha.
I forgot to ask this during the air condition report. Some of the parent council have asked for the schools that do not have air conditioning, can they fundraise and buy air conditioning? Like, you know, the window air conditioning?
So through the chair, we highly discourage buying window air conditioning units or any air conditioning unit which you could pick up at the Home Depot or any other department store, because those are residential grade air conditioning units, and we're introducing them into a commercial setting. So when you have one at home, if it beeps and you have to drain the water from it, there's someone there to do that. Those aren't made to run 24 hours a day. They're not made to air or cool a building our size. Introducing anything that's not commercial grade into our buildings is a liability from a number of different standpoints. Electricity standpoint, who turns it off, who turns it on, leaking water damage standpoint. So the polite short answer is we highly, highly, highly discourage the purchasing of residential grade air conditioners.
You're thinking about the windows through the chair. There are now air conditioning, you know, that's the stand. It's a stand. And there's no leaking on that one.
So, yeah. So what also happens is again, residential units of any kind, even very, very popular ones, are meant to be kind of monitored on a regular basis. So you turn them on, you turn them off, they're there, you see them all the time, you go to bed, you turn them on or off. What happens is somebody leaves it on a Friday in a school environment and the bearings run out of it, or something breaks down on it because it's not made to run that long. It starts a fire. And I mean, that's one example we've had to go through at another school board I was with, but it's just very highly discouraged, highly, highly discouraged.
Highly discouraged.
Highly.
I got the point.
That's my polite way of.
Okay, I take that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say, because during the very hot season, when it gets the very hot season, you have, in one of the schools I represent, there are some air conditioning in some area and there's some not. So you may have situation that the child may have a condition that really aggravates when it's very hot. Asthma is, I think, one of them that aggravates. You need to have cooler air when something like that. So this is one of the concerns that parents have brought to me, and so I thought I'll ask. And the suggestion was not just the one that you put on the window, but this is the new one. It's one of the modern version that it stands. And I don't think it will cause fire.
Yeah, so through the chair, what I would suggest, and it was a program we started pre-COVID, if trustees will recall, through the facilities department, and through the chair, I see that trustee Sean Xavier has his hand up. Okay.
Waiting for you to finish.
Okay, thanks. But what we had introduced just prior to COVID was portable commercial grade air conditioning units, which we had centrally, and that we would deploy specifically in some of the schools where there's a second floor and it's not air conditioned. So whether it was fans or these units, we had them, and it'll be something that we can look at reintroducing. And it went away when the schools closed because there's nobody around, but it would be a program that we'd look at reintroducing that along with the cooling stations in the gymnasiums. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, to this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, this point or question is kind of in relation to what Trustee Del Rosario was saying, but also what Director Del Bianco had mentioned. If would parents be able to, I understand that it's highly not wanted to buy the residential air conditioning units, but what if parents wanted to fundraise to buy these portable commercial air conditioning units? Is that a possibility? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
So through the chair, if you have a school council that's looking at something like that, we can have a chat with them about the costs and what they're looking for. But it would definitely have to be a commercial grade unit. And I think we sourced them out a couple of years ago, so we should still have that information with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify, if I go to a parent council meeting and a parent council kind of comes forward saying, hey, we want to fundraise for air conditioning units that are commercially grade, I can connect them with you, Associate Director Del Bianco, and we can go from there.
Well, I think acting Superintendent Mariah is probably the better person, but yes, I mean, they're larger units, right? So there's a couple of things you have to, when we deployed them centrally, we had an area to store them at the end of the season because they're larger units. We cool down the hallways with them and we use fans to kind of get them into the classroom. So before any school goes out or school council goes out and says, I want to buy a number of them, I think we have to make sure that electricity wise, we have the power to run these in some of the buildings, and two, is there a storage place in the building for them, and is the custodial staff trained to use them? So there's a couple of things to take into consideration aside from just going out and purchasing. But the best thing to do is if you have a school council that's interested, connect with the facilities department, and we can discuss with them in a little more detail.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sean. Stefano? You're okay? Daryl, then Gia, and then Rahim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 6 questions. Very short, very.
Should have started at 7 o'clock.
Okay. They're very short questions, and I guess the answers will come in issues and events. So we have an adult learning center in Brampton at Gillingham Drive near Old Rona. Do we own that place or we are renting that place?
Through the chair, we lease it.
Now, the fact that we've got so many schools that are shuttered, is there no possibility of moving that center and saving on their lease?
Through that chair, that is a satellite site of the Archbishop Romero School. So these would be students who have been expelled from schools and have been assigned to the Archbishop Romero program. So while some of those programs run out of Blessed Trinity in Mississauga, the Brampton site is intended to service the needs up in Brampton. So it wouldn't be a program that we would be looking to put in schools. That's why we specifically lease it, and the ministry funds the leasing costs.
Okay, so we paid for it.
Correct.
Second question was,
Good.
I had, pre-summer, I had requested for a meeting to find out the cost of Edwin's. It was scheduled and then it fell between cracks, and that crack is really deep now. So,
Through the chair, we apologize. I will reach out to you before the end of the week to schedule some time to talk about that.
thank you.
Unless I fall
Director.
further into the abyss.
Yeah, that's my concern.
Daryl?
Good.
Go ahead.
I had discussed with the associate director about the abandoned rate of calls going to ICT, which was at 50%. Third week of August to the first week of September. Still awaiting some update on that.
It's report card day and we're not doing well.
It's like it.
I'll come back to you, Daryl.
Thank you.
Gia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is from Student Senate, actually. And the senators were asking, well, they're reporting that there are associated costs like club fees with almost every club they join at their school due to their principals not allocating funds to their club or taking on expenses, thus making extracurriculars inaccessible for students. What recommendations could be made to resolve this? Thank you.
Thank you
Mr.
for the
Chair.
question. The extracurriculars should not be inaccessible to students. They shouldn't be. So if I need to provide some clarification, I will do so. Schools do have a mechanism to support students who, or families who require some support around that. But I will share with you, though, that schools collect the activity fees, but that's voluntary. So with it being voluntary, not everybody is paying activity fees, which means that schools have seen a decline in the amount of activity fee money that's coming into the schools. And those fees historically would have been used to offset the cost associated with school initiatives and student activities. And that should help to support clubs and teams, but it's not enough support to cover all the costs that are associated with it. Schools should also be aware that of all the fees that are being charged and ensure transparency. So any fees for clubs should include information on what the fee is being used for. But I would also identify that we did message to the schools that if they're supporting one particular student activity, whether it's a sports team, etc., then they should be supporting all the student clubs that are going on in the school. So if that's not happening, which it sounds like it's not, then I will be ensuring that that message is sent again to the schools. So thanks for raising it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's it? You're done? Raheem, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and regrettably, I do also have a couple of questions, so I'll
Okay.
ask two and we can go back to Trustee D'Souza. To second what Gia said, at our student senate meetings, we do take feedback from our senators, and we did share with them that any queries they have, we'll be sure to ask them at our meetings. When student leaders are having fundraising initiatives for their clubs within their schools, some are reporting that they're told by their admin team that there's a limit to how much money they can fundraise. And in addition, some are told that if they fundraise, the money cannot go to their club. And one particular senator told me they can't keep the money because it's a board policy. So through you, Mr. Chairman, my two questions are, what is the limit to fundraising? And is there actually a policy surrounding clubs keeping the money and also potentially transferring it over into the next school year?
Yeah, so through the chair, student-led fundraising still has to follow policy and GAP. And the fundraising gap does indicate that the principal shall give careful consideration to the number and frequency and extent of fundraising activities undertaken in any school year. Major school-wide initiatives should normally be limited to a maximum of 3 per year. But that said, a principal needs to understand the school community they operate within. There may be some communities where you could go beyond the 3. There would be other communities where it would be a real challenge to that community to continue to be going out for fundraising. There's no limitations on how much can be raised, but there must be transparency. And how, in terms of how those funds raised are going to be used. And funds raised have to be deposited in a school bank account. They cannot be done using school or student bank accounts. So again, certainly we can do some reminders. But in addition, if this is just maybe a one-off or so, then I'm happy to have an offline conversation with you if there's specific schools where there needs to be conversations with them. In regards to your question around a policy, I don't believe a policy is required at this time. Of course, policies belong to trustees if they feel they need a policy in order to ensure these messages are heard and consistent across the board. I would just suggest I will I will ensure that I'm messaging these concerns again to our principals.
Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My second question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Could we formulate some type of recommendation or policy surrounding allocating funds to student-led equity clubs? So this could be BSAs, six student associations, GSAs in our schools, and ensure that the initiatives have financial support, because we're seeing the manpower in our schools as it pertains to equity and even board-wide, but as for the funding aspect, they can't build capacity if there's no money.
Yeah, so through the chair, I think I kind of touched upon that in my previous answer, that I'm not sure. I mean, as I said, if the trustees feel that they need to put this into policy, but I will be taking this back and ensuring that I address this on my webcasts and at other meetings that I have just with the principals, to identify that if they are providing support to any kind of student activity, they need to be equitable in the way in which they do that, especially the student support groups that are in the schools.
Thank you so much. I'm willing to go back to the bottom of the list.
That was your second question. You have one more.
Thank you so much. In relation to graduations, students were told that regardless of their ability to pay grad fees, they will graduate, which I'm happy to hear. However, those unable to cover the fee won't receive a graduation gown.
Excuse me?
How can we save students from the embarrassment, I guess, they don't get a gown?
Well, through the chair, I share your concern that you're raising. Thank you for raising it. Again, can we have an I will do a blanket reminder to everybody, but maybe an offline conversation, especially, like, I'm not sure whether this is permeating the entire system or it might be local to a couple of schools where we'd have a very targeted conversation with them. We would not want to see that kind of approach to graduation for any of our students.
Thank you so much.
Thomas and Mario, Daryl, and then back to you, Raheem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question backlog for Ascension Track and Field. So long waited, the community was waiting for a long time, and we allotted the fund, and we didn't get any feedback from our city or our new associate superintendent, Richard, or our associate director. So any feedback you received from the city? Because of their promise, they're going to be groundbreaking for this year. Now going to be winter is coming, and nothing happened, no action take place over there.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. The city is in charge of that project and coordinating all of that. They have, the last information I have from them is the fact that they have tendered the project and they're in the process of finalizing who the contractor that they're selecting is going to be. And I'm not sure when they're going to break ground on the project, but it's proceeding. So I can get an update in issues and events on Friday as to what the status is from the city on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mario, then Daryl, then Raheem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to our director. Madam Director, I had a couple of calls regarding why we have to purchase, requesting why we have to purchase through purchasing department, various type of things we want to buy. I know in the past, we put out an explanation, basically, why we're doing. Can we sort of look at that and restart it up, if you don't mind? There's a lot of
Chair, we
people,
can
and you can
provide-
see it, you can see it tonight. There's a lot of questions of, what can we buy, what can't we buy? We might as well nip it at the bud in terms of asking questions, and hopefully we'll answer all the questions.
To the chair, we can put some speaking notes and issues and events for trustees when,
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we've done something like this in the past. It's resurrecting that information. Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mario, Daryl, then Raheem.
Bruno, could I just say something to that effect?
Or Mario.
Oh,
To that point,
that point.
Go ahead.
To the chair, would you kindly also include, is there a gap or a policy that we have about it? Because I did receive a call with regards to that vendor list and who's eligible to participate and what kind that they can purchase. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Daryl, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a harvest for harvesting for the Rosary Apostolate in our parish a month ago, and there were 2 students in grade 7 and grade 8 who are homeschooled, who wanted to become part of the Rosary Apostolate. Now, the Rosary Apostolate does not have a problem including them because they're at home, they don't go to school. However, the question is that they will not be able to get a criminal check done because they are underage. Does the school board or the staff have any problems these kids to join the Rosary Apostolate group and visit schools to recite the Rosary? Now, they will probably not be going to grade 7s and 8s. They'll only do kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2. But
Through the chair, that's a very interesting and unique request. Are they asking, would they be accompanying a
Yes,
member
yes,
of the
yes.
Rosary Apostolate? So
they won't be alone.
they're not coming alone.
No.
Yeah, so let me follow up on that tomorrow. My initial analysis of that is I don't believe it would be a problem.
Yeah, they will never be alone. They'll always be accompanied by an adult
Who would have a criminal
who will,
reference check?
who
Yeah.
has a criminal record.
Not the child. Not the child.
The child cannot.
Yeah, he's young.
Okay,
Go ahead.
next question. I had requested for the number of consultants that are there in Dufferin Peel. Still awaiting.
Through the chair, we'll put that in issues and events.
And my last question,
Through the chair, can I just ask the detail that you want around that? Do you want?
just the number and which department, by which department? Probably I would assume everyone would be in
Through the chair, we'll
program.
probably also provide
One
information,
would be
i.e.
One would be in Daniel's department. Anyone in your department?
I have a consultant? No,
No?
I
No,
don't.
the one who did this check, this air conditioning check.
Oh, there, we've terminated them.
Okay,
They're,
thank you.
they're no longer consultants.
Through the chair, we will provide some specificity around that. The reason why is because almost all of the consultants that we have, and when you say consultants, like all the consultants are on the instructional side supporting the work of schools, but they're all tied to grants. So what I mean is that the Ministry of Education provides specific grants in order for those consultants to be there.
If the grants are removed, the consultant is fired.
Exactly. The vast majority of them.
Vast majority, or all of them?
I want to say the vast majority of them, but I'll get that specificity for issues and events.
Yeah.
That's why the terms of the consultants are always posted, that it's depending on the continuation of the grant. So for example, the Ministry of Education gave boards what are called math facilitators. They gave you an amount of money that translates into an FTE, the same thing for literacy teachers to support early reading, et cetera. But if the ministry discontinued that funding to boards, those positions would be discontinued in our board because, you know,
Right.
we're challenged. So I'll provide,
Yeah,
it's
that-
important that you have
Right.
that kind of information.
My last question, Mr. Chairman. Just for my information, do all departments have administrative assistants? Or what positions have administrative assistants?
Through the chair, may be aware that we've been reducing the number of administrative assistants over the last few years. So the model for the most part is that supervisory officers are sharing administrative assistants. So it's not dedicated to just.
But then departments have secretaries or something?
Departments would have some secretaries to support the work. Administrative assistants, for the most part, are supporting the work of supervisory officers or the director's office or the associate director's offices. But there's sharing models, so they're supporting a couple of supervisory offices.
But secretaries are there in every department?
No. I'm going to leave that to, no, we don't have secretaries in every department.
You have them in most departments, few departments, 10, 20, 30, 40?
There's secretaries in the finance department, there's secretaries in plant and operations.
Oh, he's saying no.
Who said that? No. All right, there's no secretaries
Oh,
in
yeah,
finance.
yeah.
Okay, well,
Sorry, through the chair, there are positions throughout the board. Plant operations would have a number of secretarials, for different areas, construction, maintenance. Program department would have secretarial support in their area for different functional areas that consultants may be working in or doing work for. There's no secretaries in the ICT department. There's just one supporting the superintendent, the CIO, and the managers. So it varies across the board. There
We get
are
some-
department secretaries, but not in every area.
Can we get some statistics and issues and events if possible?
through the chair, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Rahim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. If trustees and staff recall, a couple of meetings ago, I queried about fundraising using tap machines. And I did share the feedback I got with the student senators that they should have their admin follow up with the finance department regarding the options available to schools for fundraising. And when the senators followed up with admin specifically about tap machines, they were told that it's a concern of the board that we might be susceptible to data leaks, considering that we collect any and all data used over the network. So is it possible that we could have a separate subnetwork just for these tap machines?
Well, I know that financial services has done some preliminary work on investigating contactless options, but we're not at that point. I know you'd like to be at that point, but we're not there yet. Any system considered obviously has to be reviewed by ICT because we want to ensure that we aren't going to invite attacks on our network through introducing this method of payment. And using the contactless payment, it does raise many questions for us. So what device would we use? Is it a student phone? Does it require additional Wi-Fi? Does that mean we have to upgrade our Wi-Fi, which has costs associated with it, et cetera? And not all contactless devices have all the security and controls that we would require, and that would be a big issue for us. There's some options that finance has put in place, though, to assist the schools, like QR codes for payments. School secretarial staff know they can contact our system support team for assistance.
Thank you, Madam Director.
You're welcome.
And my last question, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but I only came up with this during the meeting. After hearing Trustee Bria Corbett talk about digital report cards, through you, Mr. Chairman, could we pilot a program similar, but for permission forms? Because we do waste a lot of paper.
Yeah, through the chair, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. We'll look at that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, move adjournment. Or move into camera. Move into camera by Thomas. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 10:25. report from in-camera. Approve the minutes of the in-camera session of the Administration and Finance Committee meeting of September 10th, 2024, and dealt with a financial matter. Move adjournment, moved by Luz.
We need approval of the Horizon report.
Approval of the Horizon report, moved by Bria. All in favor? Opposed? Move adjournment, moved by Luz. All in favor? Opposed?